My name is Melissa. I'm 26 years old and getting ready to have my baby at home. But there's a problem. My mother-in-law doesn't seem to like me much. She says mean things about me to my husband when she thinks I can't hear. She says I'm not nice, not helpful, don't make money, and have no good qualities. I wanted to tell her off, but I'm pregnant and don't want to make things worse. So I just try to ignore her negativity and focus on taking care of myself and the baby. I'm really excited to meet my baby soon. So while I'm waiting, I take walks and talk to my belly every day. It's a happy time for me. But then my mother-in-law shows up unexpectedly and stays for too long. She complains about everything, like the food and the baby's room. Finally, my baby is born safely, and even though things are busy, I enjoy raising her in my cheerful childhood home. I tell my husband that I'll be back at his place next weekend, but secretly, I wish I could stay home a little longer. I wonder how long I can rely on others, especially since my husband isn't interested in doing housework. I thought to myself. Holding my sleeping baby Lisa in my arms, I smiled at her. This is going to be your home, Lisa? We need to go back and make it cozy, I whispered. When I arrived at our house with lots of bags, I hoped someone would open the door for me when I rang the bell, but nobody did. I struggled to unlock the door and went inside, only to find nobody there. I had told my husband I'd be back by now. As I walked into the living room, I was shocked by what I saw. What happened here? The room was a complete mess, with stuff scattered everywhere. It wasn't just untidy. It looked like someone had deliberately made a mess. Was it a break-in? Terrified, I ran out of the house. Hello, police. I just got back from having my baby, and my house is a disaster, I said shakily into the phone, while my peacefully sleeping baby began to cry, adding to my panic. A neighbor passing by noticed our distress and kindly invited us to rest at their house. They helped me calm down from the shock and fear. After giving my daughter some milk, she fell back asleep. Soon, we heard police sirens, and I went back to my house with the neighbor by my side. The front door was still locked. I was too scared to go in after seeing the living room, so I hadn't checked the other rooms. When I explained this to the police, they commended me for being cautious. They explained that encountering a burglar can be dangerous, so it's safer to stay outside and wait for them to arrive. I hadn't thought about that in my rush, but the idea scared me now. As I finished explaining, a voice full of uncertainty spoke up. What's going on? Why are the police here? It was my mother-in-law. It's a bad situation, mother-in-law. Our house has been ransacked, and we suspect it was a burglary. The police are here to investigate, I explained before she could interrupt. I felt a sharp sting on my cheek as my mother-in-law slapped me hard. My vision blurred from the shock, and amidst the chaos of neighbors and police, I instinctively held my sore cheek. My mother-in-law's face was flushed red with anger as she yelled at me, accusing me of being shameless for calling the police about a burglary. I was stunned, unable to understand why she was so furious, especially with the pain in my cheek throbbing. A neighbor tried to intervene, explaining that calling the police was the right thing to do and it's their job to investigate, but she wouldn't listen. She went on to scold me for leaving my husband alone and going back to my parents' house during childbirth. She said I was useless if I wasn't at home doing housework. And now, she was upset that I had caused a scene by calling the police. Even though everyone around tried to reason with her and tell her it wasn't my fault, she wouldn't listen. As I tried to make sense of it all, I realized something strange. Despite our house possibly being burgled, she didn't seem concerned about any losses. And even though it was the first time she was meeting her grandchild, she didn't show any interest. Why? Everyone around me didn't seem to agree with what I was saying. That's not the point. How can you accuse me without even saying sorry? My mother-in-law completely ignored my question, sticking to her argument. Mom, what's happening? Brian, my husband, interrupted the argument, appearing quite calm. Brian, listen to this. It's awful. My mother-in-law's face lit up with delight at the sight of her beloved son. Melissa apparently called the police. Huh. Why? She's been going on about a burglary, but that's impossible. Brian, please tell her to stop being so ridiculous, my mother-in-law insisted. Is that true? Melissa, maybe you got it wrong about the burglary. It's bothering the neighbors, you know? And the police have other things to deal with, so let's send them away soon. Brian said, trying to calm things down. What? I was shocked, but for a different reason this time. Not only was my mother-in-law against me, but now my husband, Brian, seemed to be too. I couldn't believe he would say something like that. Wait, Brian, our house isn't just messy. The police are still investigating. We don't know for sure if it was a burglary yet, but something is definitely off about the state of the house. We're about to check if anything's missing and file a report. No, absolutely not. Brian interrupted me with a raised voice. But why? The conversation was becoming more confusing by the moment. I felt lost, and tears began to fill my eyes. I came back here, and nobody was here, and the room was a mess. I didn't know what happened, and I was scared. Unable to hold back my sobs, I found comfort in the embrace of a neighbor, their warmth making me cry even more. Yet in front of me, both my mother-in-law and husband seemed irritated and simply stared at me. Why? Why won't you understand? My heartache seemed to affect my daughter too, as she woke up crying. This only seemed to annoy my mother-in-law and husband even further. With the kindness of the neighbors and the concerned look of the police, I ended up spending the night at a neighbor's house. Stolen things? I don't know. Melissa's just overreacting. Let's go inside, my mother-in-law said, while my husband added, yeah, Melissa, calm down. They didn't seem to care about the mess and quickly went inside after the police finished their investigation. I didn't think he was like that, I thought, standing in front of the closed door, recalling my husband's words. My mom still treats me like a child, and it's annoying. I usually just go along with her to avoid conflict, but it's really a hassle. Despite his complaints, though, I couldn't stay outside forever. After apologizing repeatedly, I ended up spending the night at my neighbor's house. Mom needs to be strong. I'll do my best, I whispered to my daughter, who was finally falling asleep despite being fussy. The next day, when I returned home, my mother-in-law and husband were there. Did you really stay here last night with everything in such a mess? The living room was somewhat tidied up for them to sit, but it looked no different from the day before. I had checked the other rooms with the police, and it seemed like things had been thrown out of storage in all of them. The mess was everywhere. Despite always complaining about my cleaning, my mother-in-law had stayed in the house in that condition, and she hadn't lifted a finger to clean up. She just sat there, looking unhappy. What do you mean? Did you really? I felt sorry for Brian, who was abandoned by his wife, so I couldn't go home. Her words hit me, and I responded, It's not that I left. It's that you didn't listen to what I was saying. What? How dare you speak like that? My mother-in-law's face quickly turned angry. Brian jumped in and stopped making a big deal out of the burglary. Have you calmed down now? He said it in a way that irritated me, and something inside me snapped. You're right. It's not like we were burgled, huh? I was surprised by how calm my voice sounded. But Brian didn't react to my anger. He just smirked a little. Finally realized it, huh? Yeah, you were overreacting about the burglary. Anyway, start cleaning up, Brian said as if it was someone else's problem. And my mother-in-law looked smug. Cleaning and taking care of the house are a wife's duties, aren't they? My mother-in-law said this in a sickeningly sweet tone, as if talking to a pet. What? I'm not cleaning up. It's your mess, so you should clean it, I said, feeling belittled by them. What? How dare you? As expected, they didn't like my response. You're such a terrible wife. Get to work. My mother-in-law snapped at me, clearly annoyed. What a hassle, my husband grumbled in agreement. I handed them the divorce papers I had prepared and filled out first thing in the morning. I want a divorce, I said firmly. My husband blinked, looking surprised. That's right. I want a divorce right now, I declared firmly. In that instant, my mother-in-law grabbed the divorce papers and melodramatically lamented, "Oh, poor Brian. Being treated like this is so awful," as she hugged my husband's head. "Such a big baby, aren't you?" Ida tried to bite my tongue, but my true feelings slipped out. "What did you just say, Melissa?" The two of them were so furious they seemed ready to explode. But I wasn't going to back down. "Did you not hear me? Or are you pretending not to understand, Brian? Divorce. Sign the papers now." I knew it was petty. I knew I shouldn't stoop to their level, but I didn't care at that point. "Stop joking around and apologize." Enraged, they pushed me to the ground, pinning me down. "Apologize now." Brian's strength made it difficult to breathe, and tears filled my eyes. "Melissa, let go of my daughter right now." My saviors were my parents rushing to my rescue. Behind them, I saw the friendly officer from the previous day, coughing and struggling for air. Relief washed over me, and my strength waned. "Why are you barging in here like this? Leave immediately." My mother-in-law and husband were being held back by the officer, squirming and resisting. "It's useless. You've been caught assaulting someone." With my father's help, I stood up and smiled at the two struggling figures. "Actually, I just asked the officer to come and check on the situation from yesterday. I never expected you to attack me." "What? What's happening?" My husband growled, but I wasn't afraid anymore. "We have a baby monitor camera installed in this house for our little Lisa. It's a live stream camera. It couldn't record the person who trashed the room, but," as I spoke, both of them visibly relaxed. "Huh. So what if it's a live camera? I told you, right? Now, the kind neighbor who helped us yesterday is watching over this room. They listened to your conversation yesterday, along with a lot of people at the police station. My parents were watching too." Yes, after my mother-in-law and husband disappeared behind the door yesterday, I started checking the baby monitor camera. The police suspected that this whole break-in thing seemed fishy, perhaps even staged. Not just my mother-in-law, but my husband too might be involved, I explained. They guessed right. When I came home, the room was all messy, and you both acted surprised, blaming me for it. You planned to make my parents apologize by saying they didn't want a daughter-in-law who'd do something like that. But you didn't want a daughter-in-law at all because we had a baby girl, not a boy. You wanted to replace me with someone else, right? And what's this about an affair approved by the mother-in-law? I said it all quickly, and everyone looked at them coldly. "It must be a mistake," my husband said nervously. "No way. I would never cheat." Melissa, do you still have more to say? This nonsense. Stop." My mother-in-law, who forgot herself for a moment and got angry, wasn't forgiven by the others. I also refused to accept being judged on such an unfair basis. I don't want a family that doesn't care about how our baby is doing. It's not right that our neighbor, who's been looking after her, shows more love than my own family since I arrived today. I'm going back to my parents' house. And yes, I'll file for divorce and fight for custody of our daughter. It seems that's what you all wanted. No, wait a minute, not to the police station. I don't want to go. Let go. I don't want to. Both of them caused a scene as the police took them away. Afterward, my mother-in-law and husband became infamous in the neighborhood, and not in a good way. They tried to make things right by offering me a divorce settlement, but it didn't help. The rumors had already spread. No matter how much they insisted they paid me, no one believed them. I returned to my parents' house and am raising my daughter with their help. Through a friend's recommendation, I found a job nearby. It's not easy, and I have my worries, but when I see my daughter's smiling face, I feel determined to do my best. I'll work hard to raise Lisa well, making sure she doesn't turn out like her father.
The day my brother-in-law destroyed my life, he did it with a smile. I watched him lean back in his leather chair, manicured fingers drumming against the mahogany desk that had belonged to my late father-in-law. I'm Ainsley, and until that moment, I'd spent 8 years building the Jordan family boutiques from a small local shop into a thriving chain across 3 states. My children were napping in their usual spot, the cozy corner of my office decorated with their artwork and stuffed animals, when Beau called me in for what he claimed was a routine meeting. "Let's cut to the chase," Beau said, adjusting his gold cufflinks. "We're restructuring and your position is being eliminated." The words hit like a physical blow. Eliminated? I built half these stores from the ground up. Come now, Ainsley. You helped with the decorating, sure, but let's not exaggerate your contribution. His condescending tone made my skin crawl. Since Mark's passing, we need to think about the future. Professional management, not family projects. My hands trembled as I gripped the chair. Mark wanted me to help run this company. He trusted me. "My brother's dead," Beau snapped, mask of civility cracking. "And his sentimental decisions aren't binding. You have until the end of the month to clear out your office. Oh, and the house too. It's company property." "The house? My children's home?" My voice cracked. "Where are we supposed to go?" "That's not my concern. I'm sure you'll figure something out." He turned to his computer, dismissing me. "Close the door on your way out." I stumbled back to my office, mind racing. Through the glass partition, I could see Tegan and Asher still sleeping peacefully. Tegan's dark curls spilled across her sketchbook. She'd been drawing designs for Mommy's stores again. Asher clutched his favourite stuffed elephant, the one Mark gave him before. "Ainsley?" Eleanor, my assistant and closest friend, appeared at my side. "What happened? You're white as a sheet." "He's throwing us out," I whispered. "The job, the house, everything." Eleanor's face hardened. "That snake, he can't do this." "He already has." I sank into my chair. "I have 3 weeks to find a new home and job." "Stay with me," Eleanor offered immediately. "My spare room's yours as long as you need." Before I could respond, Tegan stirred. "Mummy, why are you crying?" I quickly wiped my eyes. "Just a little tired, sweetheart. Hey, how about we pack up early today? We could get ice cream." As I gathered their things, Beau's voice carried through the office. "Brady, so glad you could make it. Let me show you the new plans." Brady King, his wealthy investor, followed Beau past my office. He caught my eye briefly, frowning at my obvious distress, but continued on. That evening, after getting the kids settled at Eleanor's, I returned to pack up my office. The building was silent except for the hum of the cleaning crew's vacuum. I carefully wrapped each of Tegan's drawings, every family photo, every memory of the business I'd helped build. My phone buzzed, a text from my sister Kim. "Just heard. I'm so sorry. Beau wouldn't listen to me. Call me." I couldn't. Not yet. Not when I was barely holding it together. The last item I packed was a framed photo of Mark and me at the opening of our 3rd store. His proud smile, his hand on my shoulder. "You're the creative heart of this place, Ains," he'd said that day. A sound at the door made me turn. Brady stood there, looking uncomfortable. "I heard what happened," he said. "Beau's making a mistake." I straightened my spine. "Thank you, but I'll be fine." "I'm sure you will." He handed me his business card. "When you figure out your next move, call me. Talent shouldn't go to waste." After he left, I stared at the empty office, my second home for nearly a decade, the corner where my children grew up, the walls that had witnessed countless victories and challenges. "Mummy," Tegan's voice came through my phone speaker. "When are you coming back?" "Soon, baby. Just finishing up some work. Can you read me and Asher a story?" I clutched the phone tighter. "Of course. Let me grab my keys." Standing in the doorway one last time, something shifted inside me. Beau thought he was ending my story, but he was wrong. This wasn't an ending, it was a beginning. My children wouldn't grow up seeing their mother defeated. They would see her rise, stronger than ever. I flicked off the lights and walked away, Brady's card burning a hole in my pocket. Beau wanted a war? Fine. But he'd soon learn I wasn't the decorative little widow he could simply discard. Game on, brother-in-law. Game on. "Mommy, look, I made it sparkly." Tegan twirled in the makeshift studio we'd created in Eleanor's garage, her sample dress now adorned with hand-painted glitter stars. 6 months had passed since Beau's betrayal, and my daughter's innocent creativity had become my unexpected salvation. What started as me altering her old clothes to save money had evolved into something more. "Those stars are perfect," I said, snapping a photo. Want to help me paint more? Eleanor burst through the door, waving her phone. Ainsley, that mommy blogger I told you about, she just posted about Tegan's dress from last week. Her followers are going crazy. I grabbed the phone, scrolling through hundreds of comments. Where can I buy this? My daughter needs this. Finally, something unique. See? Eleanor grinned. I told you we were onto something. Kids' boutique fashion, but with that magical touch Tegan adds. It's genius. The doorbell rang, and Jacob Price, my former supplier from Jordan Family Boutiques, stepped into our cramped workspace. He surveyed the racks of hand-decorated children's clothes with an appraising eye. When you called, I was skeptical, he admitted. But this is different. Fresh. Different enough to help us scale up? I asked, heart pounding. He picked up one of Tegan's painted dresses. With the right backing, absolutely. But you'll need capital. Already working on that, I said, pulling out Brady's card. He told me to call when I had a plan. Well, now I do. Eleanor squeezed my hand as I dialed. When Brady answered, his interest was immediate. Send me your business proposal. And, Ainsley, make it bold. The next weeks were a blur. Brady's investment allowed us to rent a real workshop. Jacob connected us with ethical manufacturers. Eleanor managed our growing social media presence while I designed. But it wasn't all smooth sailing. Mom, Asher called one night, holding up my phone. Aunt Kim's calling again. I took the phone, bracing myself. Kim? Beau's furious, she said without preamble. He saw your Instagram. Says you're stealing his market. I laughed bitterly. His market? He kicked me out, remember? I know, she sighed. Be careful, okay? He's making calls, trying to pressure your suppliers. Let him try. I've got better allies now. After hanging up, I found Tegan and Asher colouring at their homework table in the workshop. Who wants pizza? Can we eat in the sparkle corner? Asher asked, referring to the area where we decorated clothes. Only if you promise not to spill on the new shipment. Eleanor joined us, laptop in hand. Speaking of new shipments, our holiday collection just sold out. In 2 hours. What? I nearly dropped the pizza. The whole collection. Every piece. And that's not all. She turned the screen toward me. Remember that boutique in Miami you loved? They want to carry our line. Tears pricked my eyes as I remembered Beau's words. Let's not exaggerate your contribution. The next morning, Brady visited our workshop. He watched Tegan demonstrate her glitter technique to our new design assistant while I showed him the numbers. Impressive, he said. Very impressive. You know, Beau called me last week. I stiffened. Oh? Wanted me to pull my investment. Said you were... He chuckled. What was the phrase? Amateur hour with glitter. And I told him I prefer to back winners. Brady gestured around the bustling workshop. This is just the beginning, Ainsley. Your brand has heart. That's rare. Later that night, after the kids were asleep in our new apartment above the workshop, Eleanor and I sat surrounded by design sketches. We need a name, she said. Something that captures the magic. I picked up one of Tegan's drawings, a dress covered in stars with "For Mommy" scrawled across the top. What about Starlight and Stories? Because every piece tells a story? Perfect. Eleanor raised her wine glass. To Starlight and Stories, and to proving that amateur hour can kick professional butt. My phone buzzed with an email notification. Another major boutique wanted to schedule a meeting. Below it was a text from Kim. Beau's losing it. His numbers are down. Karma's real, sis. I smiled, thinking of the empty office where Beau had dismissed me. Now I had my own office, filled with children's laughter and creativity. My kids weren't just surviving, they were thriving, watching their mother build something beautiful from nothing. Hey, Eleanor said softly, where'd you go just now? Just thinking about how sometimes the worst endings lead to the best beginnings. She clinked her glass against mine. And we're just getting started. Looking at our workshop below, glittering with possibility, I knew she was right. This wasn't just about revenge anymore. It was about creating something meaningful, something that would make my children proud. And if it happened to drive Beau crazy in the process, Well, that was just a glittery bonus. The gold-embossed envelope arrived on a Tuesday morning, just as I was helping Tegan pick out her outfit for career day at school. "I'm wearing Starlight and Stories, Mommy," she declared, twirling in one of our newest designs, "because I'm going to be a fashion designer like you." Eleanor appeared in the doorway, holding the envelope like it might bite. "This just came by courier." I recognized the Jordan family crest immediately. 2 years had passed since Beau kicked us out, and now here was his fancy invitation, demanding attention just like its sender. "What is it?" Asher peered around Eleanor's leg. "Your Uncle Beau is hosting a family reunion," I read aloud, my voice steady despite my racing heart. "At the Mountain View Resort." "The whole family?" Tegan's eyes lit up. "Even Aunt Kim?" "Yes, Princess. Everyone." Eleanor waited until the kids left for school before pouncing. "You're not seriously considering going, are you?" "Kim's been begging me to visit," I said, turning the invitation over in my hands. "And the kids miss their cousins." "It's a trap," Eleanor declared, pacing our office. "Beau's up to something. Why else host a reunion now?" My phone buzzed, Brady calling. "Have you seen the business news?" he asked without preamble. I pulled up the article he texted. "Jordan Family Boutique seeking new investment partners." My eyes widened at the details. "Beau's empire is crumbling," Brady said. "Your success with Starlight and Stories hit him harder than anyone expected. He's lost 3 major investors in the last month. So the reunion is damage control. He needs to show a united family front to attract new investors." Brady paused. "He needs you, Ainsley. Your brand is worth more than his now." After hanging up, I found Eleanor stress-organizing fabric swatches. "Brady thinks Beau's desperate," I told her. "Perfect! Send your regrets. Let him sweat." But before I could respond, Kim called. "Please come," she begged. "Beau's being impossible. The kids ask about Tegan and Asher constantly. And..." She lowered her voice. "Things aren't good here, Ains. I could use my sister." That evening, during our weekly pizza and movie night, I watched my children laugh at the screen. They deserved to know their family, despite Beau's actions. "Hey, Munchkins," I said during a quiet moment. "How would you feel about seeing your cousins next weekend?" Their excited squeals drowned out the movie. The next morning, Jacob visited with our latest sales reports. "The Miami boutiques want to double their orders," he said, then noticed the invitation on my desk. "Ah, you got one too?" "Two? You're invited?" He nodded. "Beau's inviting everyone who matters in the industry. It's quite transparent, really." "What would you do?" Jacob leaned back, thoughtful. "I'd go, show strength. But Ainsley," his eyes twinkled, "I'd wear your best design." That afternoon, while the kids did homework in the workshop, Eleanor helped me draft the RSVP. "If we're doing this," she said, "we're doing it right. We'll need new pieces for you and the kids. Something that screams success but whispers class." "Already sketching," I said, showing her my notebook. "Remember that midnight blue fabric we've been saving? We worked late into the night creating the perfect outfits. Tegan insisted on adding her signature stars to her dress, tiny, elegant ones that caught the light. A week later, Kim called again. "Beau's micromanaging everything," she sighed. "He's invited half the fashion industry. It's not even a family reunion anymore. It's a networking event. How are you holding up?" "Honestly, I miss my sister. I miss who we all used to be." After we hung up, I found Asher studying the old family photo on my desk. "Mom? Is Uncle Beau still mad at us?" I sat beside him. "Sometimes grown-ups make mistakes when they're scared or angry, but that doesn't mean we have to stay angry back." "Is that why we're going? To not be angry?" "We're going because family is complicated but important, and because sometimes being strong means showing up, even when it's hard." That night, I lay awake, remembering the day Beau threw us out. I'd been broken then, terrified. Now I ran a successful company. My children were happy. We'd not just survived, we'd flourished. My phone lit up with a text from Brady. "Just heard from another Jordan investor. They're jumping ship. Beau's going to be desperate at this reunion. Watch your back." Eleanor's words from earlier echoed in my head. It's a trap. Maybe it was. But as I thought about Kim's plea, my children's excitement, and Yes, the delicious irony of Bo needing me now. I knew we had to go. I pulled out my sketch pad and started designing. If Bo wanted to make this reunion a show of power, I'd give him exactly that. But this time, I'd be the one writing the script. Let the games begin, brother-in-law. Let the games begin. Mountain View Resort loomed before us, all glass and stone against the autumn sky. I adjusted Tegan's star-studded midnight blue dress, a perfect match to mine, while Asher tugged at his coordinating bow tie. "Ready?" I asked my children, trying to sound more confident than I felt. "Ready," they chorused, but Asher grabbed my hand tight as we walked through the grand entrance. The reunion was in full swing, the ballroom buzzing with familiar faces and industry bigwigs. I spotted Jacob near the bar, raising his glass in silent support. Several boutique owners who carried our line broke into whispers as we passed. "Ainsley!" Kim rushed forward, wrapping me in a fierce hug. "You look amazing." She pulled back, tears in her eyes. "And look at my gorgeous niece and nephew." While the kids reunited with their cousins, Kim linked her arm through mine. "Bo's been watching the door like a hawk. He's by the investors' table with Brady." "Brady's here already?" "Hasn't left Bo's side. Though from Bo's expression, the conversation isn't going well." I caught Bo's eye across the room. His practiced smile faltered as he took in my appearance, his gaze lingering on the small but distinctive Starlight and Stories logo on my clutch. "Mommy!" Tegan called. "Everyone's asking about my dress." Sure enough, a group of women had gathered around my daughter, admiring the delicate starwork on her outfit. I recognized several as buyers from major department stores. "Your daughter's wearing one of your designs?" one asked. "It's exquisite." "Our holiday collection launches next week," I said smoothly. "I'd love to show you the lookbook." Bo appeared at my elbow, his cologne too strong, his smile too wide. "Ainsley, so glad you could make it." "Bo," I kept my voice pleasant. "Lovely party." "We need to talk," he murmured, but before he could continue, Brady approached. "Ainsley, that must be the famous Tegan I've heard so much about." Brady knelt to my daughter's level. "I love your stars. Did you help design this dress?" Tegan nodded enthusiastically. "I helped with all the dresses. Want to see my sketchbook?" While Tegan charmed Brady, I circulated the room. Everywhere I heard whispers about Starlight and Stories' meteoric rise. Several guests wore our designs, including Kim's daughter. "Your sister-in-law's quite the success story," I overheard one investor tell Bo. "Remarkable recovery after, well," Bo's face reddened. "Yes, well, family has always been our strength at Jordan Boutiques." "Really?" Brady's voice cut in. I heard differently. Bo's forced laugh couldn't hide his panic as Brady walked away. During dinner, I sat with Kim, watching Tegan and Asher play with their cousins. "How bad is it?" I asked quietly. Kim glanced at Bo, who was desperately trying to engage a disinterested investor. "Bad. He gambled big on some luxury developments. When they failed..." "Mrs. Webb?" A hotel staff member appeared. "Mr. King would like a word in the garden terrace." Outside, Brady stood examining a rose bush. "Your timing is impeccable," he said. "Bo's about to ask for your help." "What?" "He needs a merger. Your brand success, your industry goodwill. It could save Jordan Boutiques." Brady smiled. "The question is, what will you do with that power?" Before I could respond, Asher found me. "Mom, Uncle Bo made Tegan cry." I rushed inside to find my daughter sniffling while Kim berated her husband. "All I said," Bo defended, "was that her little stars were fine for children's games, but real fashion." "Real fashion," I cut in, my voice sharp. "Our little stars outsold your entire summer collection." The room fell silent. "Perhaps," Bo said tightly, "we should discuss this privately. In my office." "No." I lifted Tegan onto my hip. "We're done with private discussions in your office." "Ainsley, be reasonable. We're family." "Family?" I laughed. "Now we're family? Where was family when you threw us out?" "That was business," he hissed. "And how's business now, Bo?" His face contorted. Around us, investors and industry players, watched the drama unfold, no doubt mentally calculating the value of their Jordan Boutiques stock. "Mum?" Asha tugged my dress. "Can we go home?" "Not yet, sweetheart," I faced Bo. "You wanted to talk? Let's talk. Tomorrow my office, 9 a.m. Bring your proposal." "Your office?" He practically spat the words. "Yes, the one above my successful workshop, in my thriving business." I smiled sweetly. "You know, the amateur hour with glitter you were so worried about?" Kim stifled a laugh. Brady didn't bother hiding his. As we left the ballroom, I heard the whispers follow us, but this time they weren't about the fallen widow with 2 kids. They were about the woman who'd built an empire from scratch. "Mom?" Tegan asked as we reached our car. "Did we win?" I buckled her in, thinking of Bo's face, of tomorrow's meeting, of the long game still ahead. "No, baby, but we're about to." Bo arrived at 9:15, his Italian suit unable to hide the tension in his shoulders. Eleanor met him at reception, making him wait another 10 minutes before leading him to my office. I'd chosen my position carefully, standing at the window overlooking our workshop, where our team was preparing the holiday collection. The sound of laughter and music drifted up from below. "Quite an operation you've built," Bo said, trying to sound casual. "Let's skip the small talk." I turned to face him. "You need something from me?" "What is it?" He placed a folder on my desk. "A merger. Equal partnership. Jordan Family Boutiques and Starlight and Stories together again." "Equal?" I raised an eyebrow. "Last I checked, my company was worth 3 times yours." His jaw tightened. "The Jordan name still carries weight. The Jordan name is drowning in debt. Brady showed me the numbers." Before Bo could respond, Eleanor buzzed in. "Kim's here. Should I send her up?" Bo's face reddened. "You invited my wife?" "No," Kim said from the doorway. "I invited myself." She walked in, looking more confident than I'd seen her in years. "Someone needs to witness this conversation." "Kim, go home," Bo snapped. "Like you sent Ainsley home 2 years ago?" Kim settled into a chair. "I don't think so." I opened Bo's proposal, scanning the terms. "This is insulting. You want my company's resources but maintain majority control? It's a fair offer." "It's desperation," I cut in. "Your investors are leaving. Brady's pulling out next week. You need my success to save your failure." Bo slammed his hand on the desk. "I built that company." "No," Kim said quietly. "Dad built it. Mark expanded it. Ainsley grew it. You just inherited it." "And nearly destroyed it," I added. "Fine!" Bo threw up his hands. "What do you want? Name your terms." I pulled out my own folder. "Complete restructuring. Starlight and Stories remains independent, but acquires controlling interest in Jordan Boutiques. You step down as CEO." "That's ridiculous." "That's business," I smiled. "Isn't that what you taught me?" Kim leaned forward. "Bo, listen to her. This is the best option we have." "We?" He turned on her. "Whose side are you on?" "The side that keeps our family's legacy alive." Kim's voice hardened. "The side that doesn't end with bankruptcy." A knock at the door interrupted us. Eleanor entered with Tegan and Asha. "Sorry," she said, not looking sorry at all. "They just finished their morning design session. They wanted to show their mom their new ideas." Tegan bounded over, her sketchbook open. "Mom, look what I designed." I examined her drawing. A sophisticated take on our signature star pattern, worked into a formal dress design. It was surprisingly good. "That's actually innovative," Bo said, surprise evident in his voice. "She has her mother's eye," Kim said pointedly. Asha approached his uncle cautiously. "We made something for you two." He held out a small gift bag. Bo opened it, pulling out a handmade tie with tiny, elegant stars embroidered along the bottom. "You made this?" "Mom helped," Asha said. "She says we shouldn't stay angry even when people make mistakes." The room fell silent. Bo stared at the tie, his hands trembling slightly. "The children's workshop downstairs," I said softly. "It's not just for show. We teach kids to design, to create, to believe in themselves." I met his eyes. "That's what real legacy looks like, Bo." He sat heavily in a chair, the tie still in his hands. "I was wrong," he whispered. 2 years ago. About everything. "Yes, you were." "The merger terms," he said after a moment. "Can we discuss the leadership structure?" "You can stay on as creative director," I offered. "Under new management." Kim touched his arm. "It's a good deal, Bo. Better than we deserve." He looked around my office at the wall of magazine covers featuring our designs, at the children's corner filled with artwork, at the thriving workshop below. "Okay," he said finally. "You win, Ainsley." "No, Bo." I handed him a pen. "We all win. That's what family should be about." After the papers were signed and Kim had led a subdued Bo out, Eleanor poured us both a drink. "You did it," she said. "You actually did it." "We did it," I corrected, hugging my children close. "All of us." Tegan looked up from her sketching. "Does this mean we can visit Aunt Kim more?" "Yes, baby. And maybe we can help Uncle Bo learn to add a little sparkle to his life." "Speaking of sparkle," Eleanor grinned, "wait until you see tomorrow's sales figures. That little drama at the reunion? Our orders have tripled." I laughed, watching my children return to their designs, their futures brighter than any stars we could sow. Sometimes the best revenge isn't revenge at all. Sometimes it's showing others a better way to shine. "Are you absolutely sure about this?" Eleanor paced my office, waving the latest proposal from Brady. "Expanding into Europe is huge. Maybe we should wait until the Jordan merger settles." I was about to respond when Jacob burst in, grinning. "You won't believe who I just saw skulking around the workshop." "Bo?" I guessed, watching the children's design class like a hawk, even took notes. 3 weeks had passed since the merger, and Bo's transformation had been unexpected. He'd shown up every day, quietly observing, learning, asking questions without his usual arrogance. "Mom!" Tegan rushed in. "Uncle Bo helped me with my sketches, look." She thrust forward her notebook. The design was surprisingly good, her usual whimsy tempered with practical details I recognized from Bo's style. "He said we could try it for the spring collection," she beamed. Eleanor raised an eyebrow. "Bo? Suggesting children's designs?" "People can change," I said, just as my phone buzzed with a text from Kim. "He's different. Thank you." Jacob cleared his throat. "Speaking of change, Brady's waiting downstairs. Says it's time to decide about Europe." I found Brady in our showroom, examining our newest pieces. Bo was there too, explaining the construction of a particularly intricate dress to a group of design students. "The stars aren't just decoration," Bo was saying. "They're part of the structure. My niece taught me that." Brady smiled as I approached. "Quite a change from amateur hour with glitter, isn't it?" "The merger's working better than expected," I admitted. "Which is why we need to move now." Brady gestured to the papers in his hand. "European buyers are hungry for something fresh. Your brand tells a story they want to hear." "It's not just my brand anymore," I said, watching Bo demonstrate a stitching technique. "That's exactly why it'll work." Brady lowered his voice. "Bo knows the business side. You have the vision. Together, you could be global." Before I could respond, Asher came running in. "Mom, look what Uncle Bo helped me make." He proudly displayed a small bow tie, decorated with tiny embroidered stars. The craftsmanship was impeccable. "He said I could teach the other kids how to make them," Asher added excitedly. Bo approached, looking almost shy. "If that's okay with you, of course." "Teaching suits you," I said. "Learning suits me better." He straightened his tie, the one Asher had given him. "I've been thinking about the European expansion." Brady tensed, but Bo continued. "We should start with children's design workshops. Build community first, then introduce the brand. Do it right, not just fast." I stared at him. "That's actually brilliant." "I learned from the best." He nodded toward the workshop where Tegan was showing other kids her design techniques. "Sometimes the smallest stars shine the brightest." Eleanor appeared with fresh market reports. "Paris is calling again. They want to know about the workshop program." "Tell them yes," I said, "but with a twist. We'll bring our young designers with us." "A children's fashion tour?" Brady looked skeptical. "A family tour," I corrected, "showing Europe how American kids are revolutionizing fashion." Bo's eyes lit up. The press will love it, but more importantly, the children will learn something valuable. Speaking of valuable lessons, Kim said, entering with a stack of magazines, look who made the cover of Fashion Forward. The cover showed Tegan and Asher in their workshop, surrounded by other children, all creating designs. The headline read, "The Future of Fashion: How One Family's Story Changed an Industry." They interviewed me, Bo said quietly, asked about my biggest mistake and greatest lesson. And, I prompted, I told them the truth, that I let pride blind me to real innovation, that my 8-year-old niece understands fashion better than I did as CEO. Brady chuckled. Now that's a story worth investing in. He pulled out his phone. I'm calling London. This needs to happen now. As Brady made calls and Eleanor coordinated details, I watched Bo sit with the children, patiently teaching them about fabric and form. Kim joined them, adding her own expertise about colour theory. Mom, Tegan tugged my sleeve, can we really go to Paris? Yes, baby, we're going to show them how to make the world a little more sparkly. With Uncle Bo? With the whole family. Jacob appeared at my side. You know, when you first started this, I thought it was about revenge. So did I admitted. But sometimes the best victories aren't about winning or losing. They're about transforming, Bo added, overhearing as he helped Asher with a design. About learning to see the stars instead of the darkness. Looking around at my expanded family, Eleanor organising, Brady planning, Kim teaching, Bo learning, and my children shining, I realised we'd built something far more valuable than revenge. We'd built a constellation of second chances, all of us learning to sparkle in our own way. The Paris Fashion Week crowd fell silent as Tegan stepped onto the runway, leading a parade of young designers wearing their own creations. My daughter's midnight blue dress sparkled under the lights, each star catching and throwing back the glow like tiny mirrors. They love it, Eleanor whispered beside me. Look at their faces. She was right. The usually stoic fashion elite was smiling, phones raised to capture the moment. In the front row, Brady sat with a group of European investors, all nodding approvingly. Then I saw him, Marcus Vail, the notoriously brutal fashion critic, scribbling furiously in his notebook. My stomach clenched. Bo appeared at my shoulder. Don't worry about Marcus, watch this. Asher walked out next, wearing a perfectly tailored suit with star-studded lapels. He carried a small tablet projecting his design sketches onto the massive screen behind him. The audience gasped as his childish drawings transformed into sophisticated designs before their eyes. Your idea? I asked Bo. The technology, yes. The creativity? He smiled. All him. The show continued, each child showcasing not just clothes, but the story behind them. When Tegan returned for the finale, she didn't just walk, she twirled, stopped, and began teaching the audience her signature star pattern. And now, she announced in careful French, everyone can make their own magic. The crowd erupted. Even Marcus Vail was standing, applauding. Backstage after the show, chaos erupted. Buyers pushed forward with contracts, journalists shouted questions, and photographers' flashes created a storm of light. Madam Webb, Marcus Vail approached, his accent thick. Your children's workshop program, brilliant. But tell me, why start with Paris? Before I could answer, Bo stepped forward. Because Paris knows true innovation when they see it. Right, Marcus. Marcus's eyes narrowed. Ah, Monsieur Jordan, last time we met you said children's fashion was beneath you. I was wrong about many things, Bo said, straightening Asher's bow tie. My nephew here taught me that. Uncle Bo, Tegan called. The French kids want to learn the star pattern. A group of well-dressed children had gathered around Tegan, their parents, prominent fashion houses' representatives, watching with interest. Go, I told Bo. They need you. As Bo joined the impromptu workshop, Brady approached with the investors. They want to fast-track the expansion, not just Paris, Milan, London, Barcelona. All of them? Eleanor's eyes widened. With one condition, Brady said. They want the workshop program as part of the deal, in every location. Kim appeared, phone in hand. Social media is exploding, Zara, Starlight Kids is trending worldwide. Suddenly, Marcus Vale's voice cut through the chaos. Incredible! Who taught you this technique? We turned to see the famous critic on his knees beside Tegan, carefully adding stars to a piece of fabric. My mom invented it, Tegan said proudly, but Uncle Bo helped make it better. Marcus looked up at me. This collaboration between you and your brother-in-law, it wasn't always so amicable, no? The room quieted. Even the children sensed the tension. Bo stood facing the crowd. I made a terrible mistake 2 years ago. I let pride and fear drive away the very innovation our family needed. He met my eyes. But Ainsley taught me that true strength isn't in controlling everything. It's in letting others shine. And now, Marcus pressed. Now. Bo smiled as Asher showed a French boy how to properly knot his star-patterned tie. Now we're building something bigger than ourselves. We're building a family, Tegan announced, making everyone laugh. Later that evening, during the celebration dinner, Eleanor raised her glass. To the most successful Paris debut in recent history. To family, Kim added, squeezing Bo's hand. To second chances, Bo said quietly. Brady cleared his throat. Actually, I have one more surprise. He slid a document across the table. The European Fashion Council wants Starlight and Stories to head their new youth initiative. All expenses paid, full creative control. I stared at the proposal. This is a game changer, Brady finished. They want to implement your workshop program in schools across Europe. But that would mean moving to Paris, Eleanor said. At least temporarily. I looked at my children happily teaching their new French friends at the next table. They were already at home here, already growing in ways I never imagined. What do you think? I asked Bo. Can you handle the US operations? With Kim's help? He nodded. We've got it covered. This is your moment, Ainsley. Take it. As if on cue, Tegan ran over. Mom, can we show them the midnight collection tomorrow, please? I pulled her close, breathing in the sweet smell of her hair mixed with Paris air. 2 years ago, I'd been broken, homeless, scared. Now I was being offered the chance to change children's lives across Europe. Yes, I said, watching my daughter's face light up like her beloved stars. We can show them everything. Because sometimes the best revenge isn't revenge at all. Sometimes it's building something so beautiful that the past becomes nothing more than the foundation for a brighter future. Hold still, Uncle Bo. Tegan adjusted his bow tie, her latest design, featuring a constellation pattern that seemed to move in the light. Perfect. The grand reopening of the original Jordan family boutique had drawn quite a crowd. Through the window, I could see fashion reporters mingling with local families, all waiting for the doors to open. Ready? I asked Bo, who was fidgeting with his cufflinks. Almost. He pulled an envelope from his pocket. I need you to see this first. Inside was a deed to my old family home, the one he'd forced us to leave. I'm signing it over to you, he said. It should have been yours all along. Bo, please, let me make this right. Before I could respond, Eleanor burst in. They're getting restless out there, and wait until you see what the kids have done. We followed her to the main floor where Asher stood proudly beside a new display. The wall behind the counter had been transformed into a massive star map, each constellation marking a milestone in our journey. The largest star bore the words, "Family is forever," in Tegan's handwriting. The children from the workshop helped, Asher explained. Everyone added their own star. Kim appeared, carrying a vintage dress we'd found in storage. Remember this? From the first store? Your father's design, Bo said softly. We should display it. Already planned for that, Eleanor announced, revealing a special case. Right between Tegan's first dress and Asher's bow tie collection. Brady slipped in through the back door. The European representatives are here, and you won't believe who else showed up. Marcus Vale strode in, now wearing one of our signature ties. I wouldn't miss this for the world. The story of fashion's greatest comeback deserves proper documentation. It's not a comeback, I corrected. It's a new beginning. The children from our workshop program began arriving, each wearing their own designs. French, Italian, American, all mixing together, sharing techniques and dreams. "Mom," Tegan called, "can we do the ribbon cutting? All of us together?" I looked at Bo, who nodded. "It's your show now." "No," I said, taking the scissors. "It's our show. Family, remember?" We gathered at the entrance. Me, Bo, Kim, the kids, Eleanor, Brady, and all our young designers. The crowd pressed closer as Tegan spoke into the microphone. "Welcome to the new Jordan and Starlight Family Boutique," she announced, "where everyone's stars can shine." As we cut the ribbon together, I caught Bo wiping his eyes. "Allergies," he muttered. "Sure," Kim laughed. "Nothing to do with pride or joy or anything like that." The crowd poured in, but what touched me most was watching the children lead tours, explaining designs with professional confidence. Asher showed off his new boys' collection, while Tegan taught star stitching at a special demonstration table. "You've created something extraordinary," Marcus said, scribbling in his notebook. "Not just fashion. You've created hope." "We all did," I replied, watching Bo patiently teach a young boy how to measure fabric. "Sometimes it takes losing everything to find what matters." Eleanor appeared with news from our Paris office. The school program was expanding to 20 new locations. Brady followed with contracts from 3 major department stores. But the real moment came later, after the crowds thinned. Bo gathered everyone in the workshop area, clearing his throat nervously. "I've been thinking," he said, "about legacy and family and stars." He revealed a sketch, a design that combined his classic style with Tegan's stars. "Maybe it's time for an adult line. If my niece will teach me." Tegan threw her arms around him. "First lesson starts now." As they bent over the design table together, Kim squeezed my hand. "Look at them. Who'd have thought?" I fingered the house deed in my pocket. "People can surprise you." "Speaking of surprises," Eleanor cut in, "wait until you see next month's Fashion Forward. They're calling us the future of inclusive fashion education." "That's nice," Asher said seriously, "but can we have pizza in the workshop like old times?" Everyone laughed, and soon we were all sitting cross-legged on the floor, sharing pizza and dreams. The children taught Bo their secret handshake. Kim and Eleanor planned the next collection. Brady and Marcus debated fashion trends. Looking around at my expanded family, blood and chosen alike, I realized something. Success wasn't in proving Bo wrong. It wasn't in the contracts or magazine covers or global expansion. It was in this moment, watching my brother-in-law learn from my daughter. It was in the way Asher's eyes lit up when someone wore his designs. It was in the laughter and love filling this space that had once seen so much pain. "Mom," Tegan called, "Uncle Bo needs help with the star pattern." "Coming, baby." I joined them at the table, showing Bo the technique I'd created during those dark days after he'd thrown us out. "I was such a fool," he whispered. "No," I corrected, guiding his hands. "You were just looking at the darkness. Now you see the stars." And in that moment, surrounded by family and future, I knew we'd all found our light.
The phone buzzed against the granite countertop, its screen lighting up with a message that would shatter my world. I wouldn't have noticed it at all if I hadn't been reaching for the salt to season our anniversary breakfast, Ryan's favorite Eggs Benedict. His phone usually stayed glued to his hand, but he'd left it behind during his morning shower. "Can't wait to see you again. Last night was perfect. Delete this message." My hand trembled as I set down the whisk, hollandaise sauce forgotten. The sender's name read Melissa C. with a small heart emoji beside it. The timestamp showed 6:47 a.m., barely an hour ago. I'm Journey, and until that moment, I thought I knew what my life was. 12 years of marriage, a shared dream home in the suburbs, and plans for starting a family next spring. Now those plans felt like ashes in my mouth. The shower upstairs stopped running. I could hear Ryan's footsteps, the familiar creak of our bedroom floorboards. My fingers hovered over his phone, torn between the urge to dig deeper and the nauseating fear of what else I might find. Something smells amazing down there. Ryan called from upstairs. I swiped through to their message history. Empty. Of course he'd deleted everything else. My husband, the careful man. Always 3 steps ahead. Journey? Did you hear me? Just finishing up, I managed to call back, my voice steadier than I felt. I placed his phone exactly where I'd found it, arranged the breakfast plates, and waited. Ryan appeared in the doorway, hair still damp, wearing the blue button-down I'd given him last Christmas. He smiled, that same smile that had won me over at a mutual friend's barbecue 13 years ago. Now it made my stomach turn. Happy anniversary, beautiful. He wrapped his arms around my waist from behind, pressing a kiss to my neck. I forced myself not to stiffen, to play along. You didn't have to go all out. Apparently not, I murmured, sliding the plates onto our breakfast bar. What was that? Nothing. I smiled, watching him settle onto his usual stool. How was your shower? Good. Quick. He picked up his fork, then frowned at his phone. Did this light up while I was upstairs? Did it? I took a sip of coffee, studying him over the rim of my mug. I didn't notice. Ryan checked his messages, his expression never changing. 12 years together, and I'd never noticed how good he was at keeping his face neutral. What else had I missed? Work stuff, he said, tucking the phone into his pocket. You know how it is. Do I? He paused, fork halfway to his mouth. Everything okay? Who's Melissa? The words escaped before I could stop them, sharp and bitter as the coffee growing cold in my cup. The fork clattered against his plate. Just for a second, panic flashed across his face before that practiced calm returned. A new client. Why? A client who texts you at dawn about perfect nights? My voice didn't even sound like my own anymore. A client who needs you to delete their messages? Journey, I can explain. Please do. I pushed my untouched plate away. Explain how long you've been sleeping with her. Explain why you chose our anniversary morning to be careless enough to leave evidence. Explain how many other perfect nights there have been while I was here, planning our future. It's not what you think. He reached for my hand. I pulled away. Don't. The room felt too small suddenly, the kitchen island between us not nearly wide enough. Don't you dare try to touch me right now. We should talk about this. His tone turned placating, the same voice he used on difficult clients. You're jumping to conclusions. I stood up, my chair scraping against the hardwood floor. You're right. We should talk. Maybe we can start with how you'll explain this to your mother at dinner tonight. The color drained from his face. You wouldn't. Wouldn't I? I headed for the stairs, leaving him with his perfect eggs Benedict and his imperfect lies. Happy anniversary, Ryan. I hope she was worth it. The Parker family dining room had always felt warm and inviting, but tonight the air was thick with unspoken accusations. I watched Lena fuss over the table settings, straightening the silverware for the 3rd time while Dylan nursed his scotch in silence. Ryan hadn't arrived yet, probably crafting the perfect excuse for his bandaged hand and the dent in his precious Mercedes. Journey, dear, Lena's voice wavered slightly. Are you sure Ryan said he'd be here? It's not like him to be late to family dinner. I took another sip of wine, letting the bitter taste linger. Oh, he'll be here. He knows what's at stake. The doorbell rang, and Dylan set down his glass with a heavy thud. I'll get it. But it wasn't Ryan at the door. Instead, Chloe burst in, her face flushed with anger. I came as soon as I got your text. That lying piece of. Chloe, I cut her off, glancing meaningfully at Lena. Thank you for coming. I thought I might need a friend tonight. Understanding flickered across her face. She squeezed my hand as she sat beside me, while Lena's worried gaze darted between us. Is something wrong? Lena asked. Did something happen with Ryan's accident? The front door opened again before I could answer. Ryan stepped in, his right hand wrapped in gauze, his usual confidence dimmed. He froze when he saw Chloe. "What's she doing here?" "Supporting her friend," Chloe replied coldly. "Someone has to." Dylan cleared his throat. "Son, what happened to your hand?" "Car accident," Ryan said quickly. "Minor fender bender." "Journey, can we talk privately?" "No." I smiled, the same practiced smile he'd perfected over years of deception. "Actually, I think we should all hear about your accident. Especially the part about Melissa." Lena's fork clattered against her plate. "Who's Melissa?" "Nobody," Ryan snapped. "A client." "Journey's upset over nothing." "Nothing?" I pulled out my phone, pulled up the photo Chloe had sent me an hour ago. "Is that why you wrapped your car around a tree outside her apartment building at midnight? While your wife was sleeping at home? On our anniversary?" The color drained from Ryan's face as I turned the screen toward his parents. The timestamp on the traffic camera photo was clear, 12:17 a.m. The Mercedes, the tree, and a woman in a red dress hurrying away from the scene. "Ryan James Parker," Lena whispered, her voice breaking. "Tell me this isn't what it looks like." "It's complicated," he started, but Dylan cut him off. "Complicated?" Dylan's quiet voice carried more disappointment than anger. "Son, there's nothing complicated about betraying your wife." "You don't understand," Ryan insisted. "Melissa's not just, there are things happening at work." "At work?" I laughed, the sound sharp and hollow. "Is that what you call it?" Because her message this morning seemed pretty clear about where the real work was happening. Chloe's hand tightened around mine as Ryan's facade finally cracked. "You had no right to go through my phone. And you had no right to throw away 12 years of marriage for someone who left you bleeding in your car." The words exploded out of me. All the pain and rage I'd been containing since morning bursting free. "I didn't," he stopped, swallowed hard. "It wasn't supposed to happen like this." "No?" I stood up, my chair scraping against the hardwood. "How was it supposed to happen, Ryan? Were you going to wait until after we started trying for that baby we talked about? Or maybe after I invested my inheritance in your new business venture?" Lena gasped softly, and I saw the moment Ryan realized he'd lost not just me, but his parents too. "Journey, please," he reached for me, but Chloe stepped between us. "Don't you dare touch her. This isn't your business," he snarled at her. "Actually," I pulled out another envelope, "it is. Because while you were busy with Melissa, Chloe was helping me document everything. The late-night meetings, the mysterious withdrawals from our joint account, the calls from unknown numbers." I dropped the envelope on the table. "Happy anniversary, darling. I filed for divorce this afternoon." The silence that followed was deafening. Dylan stood up first, walking to the liquor cabinet for another scotch. Lena dabbed at her eyes with a napkin. And Ryan just stood there, finally speechless, as his carefully constructed world began to crumble. "Mom, Dad," I said softly, gathering my purse. "I'm sorry you had to find out this way. But I thought you deserved the truth." I headed for the door, Chloe right beside me. "And Ryan?" "Melissa says she's sorry about your hand. But not sorry enough to stick around when the cops showed up." I stood in our bedroom, my bedroom now, staring at the photograph that had slipped from between the pages of Ryan's leather planner. The image was like a knife to the chest, Ryan and Melissa at some rooftop bar, his arm around her waist, both laughing at something beyond the frame. The city lights sparkled behind them like stars, mocking the darkness spreading through my chest. The date stamp in the corner read 3 months ago. Our anniversary dinner at La Maison. The night he'd claimed he had to leave early for an emergency client meeting. My phone buzzed. Another message from Ryan, "Please come home. We can fix this." Home. I looked around at the carefully curated space we'd built together, the antique dresser we'd found at that estate sale in Vermont. The abstract painting from our honeymoon in Barcelona. Every piece held a memory, and every memory now felt tainted. The doorbell rang, startling me from my thoughts. Through the window, I spotted Chloe's car in the driveway. But there was someone else with her, a slim woman with dark hair who looked vaguely familiar. Journey? Chloe called from downstairs. You need to hear this. I tucked the photograph into my pocket and headed down. The dark-haired woman stood awkwardly in our foyer, wringing her hands. This is Olivia, Chloe said. Melissa's sister. My body went rigid. Get out. Please, Olivia stepped forward. I'm not here for Melissa. I'm here because you need to know the truth about what they're planning. Planning? The word felt bitter on my tongue. The business merger, Olivia said. The one that's going to destroy your husband's company. Chloe touched my arm gently. Let her talk, Journey. I led them to the kitchen, the same space where my world had imploded just days ago. Olivia perched on a bar stool, looking like she might bolt at any moment. Melissa works for Carlton Industries, she began. Has for years. They've been trying to acquire Parker Tech for months, but Ryan wouldn't sell. What does that have to do with? I stopped, the pieces clicking into place. She was sent to seduce him? Olivia nodded. It's what she does. Gets close to key players, finds their weaknesses, exploits them. But this time. She pulled out her phone, showing me an email chain. This time she's going to destroy him completely. The emails detailed everything, the planned hostile takeover, the fabricated evidence of financial misconduct. The carefully orchestrated scandal that would leave Ryan professionally ruined. Why are you showing me this? My voice sounded distant, hollow. Because I'm tired of cleaning up my sister's messes, Olivia said. And because you deserve to know that Ryan wasn't just unfaithful, he was stupid. He told her everything about the company's vulnerabilities, their security protocols, their client lists. Journey, Chloe interrupted softly. Your inheritance. The room spun slightly. The investment Ryan had been pushing for, the papers still sitting unsigned in my desk drawer. He'd wanted me to sink my entire inheritance into Parker Tech's new security division, the same division that would have been worthless after Carlton's takeover. When? I managed to ask. The board meeting next week, Olivia replied. They're going to present evidence that Ryan's been embezzling funds, force an emergency sale. Melissa's already got copies of documents he signed while. She trailed off, looking uncomfortable. While he was distracted, I finished flatly. My phone buzzed again. Another message from Ryan. I know I messed up, but I need you. The company needs you. Please call me. I showed the message to Olivia, who winced. He knows something's wrong. Melissa's stopped returning his calls. Good. I deleted his message, then looked at Chloe. Call Max. We need a lawyer. Journey, Olivia hesitated. What are you going to do? I pulled out the photograph from my pocket, studying it one last time before ripping it in half. I'm going to beat them at their own game. Ryan wanted to risk my inheritance? Fine. But it's going to cost him everything. Chloe's eyes widened. You have a plan? I do now. I turned to Olivia. But I'll need your help. Both of you. Ryan and Melissa think they're so clever, playing their little games. I smiled, and for the first time in days, it felt real. Let's show them what real manipulation looks like. The charity gala at the Parker Tech headquarters felt like walking into a snake pit. Crystal chandeliers cast deceptively warm light over the crowd of shareholders and board members, all of them circling like vultures. Whispering behind champagne flutes. I adjusted my black dress, the one Ryan always said made me look dangerous, and caught his eye across the room. He was standing with Melissa, of course. Her red dress matched the lipstick on his collar from the photo Olivia had shown me earlier. They weren't even trying to hide anymore. Ready? Chloe appeared at my elbow, Max close behind her with a leather briefcase. Almost. I watched Ryan laugh at something Melissa said, his hand lingering on her lower back. Where's Olivia? In position. She has the USB drive with the evidence. Chloe's voice was steady, but her fingers drummed against her clutch nervously. Are you sure about this? Once we start. They're about to destroy everything he built, I cut in. I'm just making sure they destroy each other instead. Max cleared his throat. The board members are gathering. It's time. I moved through the crowd, accepting condolences from people who'd heard about the divorce filing. Ryan tensed as I approached his little circle, but Melissa's smile only widened. Journey, darling, she purred. I didn't expect to see you here. Wouldn't miss it. I turned to the board chairman beside them. Mr. Phillips, I believe you were interested in discussing my investment in the company? Ryan's glass froze halfway to his lips. What? Oh, didn't Melissa tell you? I pulled out the investment papers from my clutch. We had the most fascinating conversation this morning about the company's future. She made quite a compelling case for why I should invest my inheritance now, before the big announcement. Melissa's smile slipped. I don't. In fact, I continued, she explained everything about Carlton Industries' plans. Very thorough, wasn't she, Ryan? Though I suppose you already knew all about that. The color drained from both their faces as phones around the room began buzzing. Right on schedule, Olivia had released the emails to every board member and major shareholder. What did you do? Ryan grabbed my arm, but Max stepped between us. Careful, Max warned quietly. There are cameras everywhere. Melissa was already backing away, her predatory confidence evaporating as board members began turning to stare at her, their phones in hand. It's not what you think, she started, but Phillips cut her off. Is this true? He waved his phone at Ryan. Have you been feeding company information to Carlton? Of course not. Ryan looked desperately between me and Melissa. Journey, whatever you think you know. Oh, I know everything. I smiled, the same smile he'd taught me over 12 years of marriage. The embezzlement scheme, the fake accounts, the planned takeover. Even that interesting transfer to an offshore account last week. Tell me, was that before or after your little accident outside her apartment? Security was moving through the crowd now, heading for Melissa as she edged toward the exit. Ryan reached for me again, his face twisted with rage and fear. You're bluffing. You can't prove. Actually, Olivia's voice rang out as she emerged from the crowd, we can prove all of it. Hello, sister dear. Melissa's composure finally cracked. You little bitch. Careful, I interrupted. The SEC doesn't like it when corporate spies show their temper. Oh, and they're very interested in those documents you had Ryan sign during your private meetings. The security team reached Melissa just as she lunged for her sister. In the chaos that followed, Melissa screaming, Ryan trying to explain to increasingly hostile board members. Phillips calling for an emergency meeting, I felt strangely calm. Journey, Ryan called as I turned to leave. Wait. Please. I can explain everything. I paused, looking back at the man I'd loved for so long. You know what the funny thing is? I actually believe you could explain it. You've always been good at explaining things, Ryan. But I'm done listening. The last thing I saw as the elevator doors closed was Melissa being led away in handcuffs, Ryan standing alone in a circle of accusatory stares. And Olivia raising her champagne glass in a silent toast to the destruction of her sister's carefully laid plans. The police station's interrogation room felt smaller with each passing hour. Detective Santos pushed another cup of coffee across the metal table, her expression unreadable as she reviewed my statement. Let me make sure I understand, she said. You're claiming Miss Carter orchestrated the entire affair to gain access to Parker Tech's confidential information? Yes. I wrapped my fingers around the warm cup, anchoring myself. But that's not why I'm here. No, Santos agreed. You're here because Melissa Carter was found unconscious in her apartment last night. And your soon-to-be ex-husband is missing. The words hung in the air like smoke. Through the one-way glass, I could see Olivia pacing in the hallway, her face pale with worry. She'd called me at midnight, her voice shaking. Melissa's in the hospital. Ryan was at her place. There's something I need to tell you. Miss Parker? Santos leaned forward. Where were you between 10 p.m. and midnight last night? With Chloe Bennett. We were reviewing divorce paperwork. Convenient timing. I met her gaze steadily. Nothing about this has been convenient. The door opened, and Max stepped in, his lawyer mode in full effect. My client has cooperated fully. Unless you're charging her. Not yet. Santos slid a photograph across the table. But we found this in Miss Carter's apartment. My hands trembled as I picked up the image. It showed Ryan and me at our wedding, but my face had been scratched out violently. Scrawled across it in red ink, "She knows too much." That's Melissa's handwriting, I said quietly. Are you sure? Santos asked. Because we found similar notes in your house when we searched it this morning. Along with these. She produced an evidence bag containing letters, dozens of them. My throat tightened as I recognized Ryan's handwriting, mixed with another I didn't know. They go back 6 months, Santos continued. Long before the affair became public. Care to explain? The door burst open before I could respond. Olivia rushed in, ignoring Max's attempt to stop her. You have to tell them, she blurted. About the other women. About what Melissa really did. Santos's eyebrows rose. Other women? Olivia, I warned, but she was already pulling out her phone. Show them the videos, she insisted. The ones Melissa kept. The ones she used to. A commotion in the hallway cut her off. Through the open door, I saw Ryan being led in handcuffs, his face bruised and bloody. Our eyes met for a moment before they took him to another room. Interesting timing, Santos observed. Want to revise your statement? I looked at the evidence spread across the table, the letters, the photo, the lies layered upon lies. Melissa's schemes had run deeper than any of us knew, and now Ryan's blood was quite literally on her hands. Yes, I said finally. But not about last night. About 6 months ago, when Melissa Carter first approached me about helping her take down Parker Tech. Max tensed beside me. Journey, don't. She showed me proof, I continued, ignoring him. About Ryan's other affairs. About the money he'd been stealing. About the women before me who'd tried to expose him and disappeared. I agreed to help her because I thought I was protecting other women. But I didn't know. Didn't know what? That she was one of them. That this whole thing, the affair, the company takeover, even my revenge, was part of her plan all along. I pulled out my own phone. Hands steady now. And I can prove it. Santos studied me for a long moment. Why come forward now? Because Ryan wasn't at Melissa's apartment to hurt her last night. I played the video Olivia had sent me hours ago. He was there to stop her from killing me. The surveillance footage showed Ryan confronting Melissa, her gun visible, their argument silent behind the glass. Then the struggle, the gunshot, Ryan's panic as she fell. Jesus, Santos muttered. So you see, I said quietly, the real question isn't where I was last night. It's why Melissa Carter is still alive when she's tried to kill every other woman who got close to the truth about Parker Tech. And why my husband, who I thought was the villain in this story, just saved my life. The hospital corridor stretched endlessly before me, its fluorescent lights casting harsh shadows across the linoleum. 2 police officers flanked Melissa's door, their expressions hardening as I approached. Through the window, I could see her lying there, tubes snaking from her arms. Looking far more vulnerable than the woman who'd tried to destroy my life. You shouldn't be here, Detective Santos materialized beside me, coffee in hand. It's against protocol. She tried to kill me. And now you're here, alone, in the middle of the night. Santos raised an eyebrow. That doesn't exactly help your case. My phone vibrated, another message from Ryan's lawyer. They denied his bail an hour ago. The evidence I provided had helped explain his actions at Melissa's apartment. But 12 years of marriage hadn't prepared me for seeing him led away in handcuffs, his face still bloody from their struggle. I need to talk to her, I said quietly. That's not happening. Santos stepped between me and the door. Go home, Miss Parker. Let us handle this. Like you handled the other cases? I pulled out the file Olivia had given me. Sarah Mitchell, 2018. Rebecca Torres, 2019. Both worked at Parker Tech. Both disappeared after filing harassment claims. Both cases went cold. Santos's expression shifted slightly. Where did you get that? Melissa's laptop. The one Ryan was trying to retrieve when she pulled the gun. I handed her the file. There's more. Much more. But she'll only talk to me. This is blackmail. This is survival. I met her gaze steadily. 5 minutes. That's all I need. The detective studied me for a long moment before nodding to the officers. They stepped aside, and I entered the lion's den. Melissa's eyes opened as I approached her bed. Despite the bruises and bandages, her smile was still razor-sharp. I wondered when you'd come, she whispered. Where are they? Who? Sarah. Rebecca. The others. I moved closer, my voice low. Ryan's in jail because he tried to stop you. The least you can do is tell me the truth. She laughed, the sound hollow and harsh. The truth? You wouldn't recognize it if it slapped you in the face. Your perfect husband, your perfect marriage, it was all a lie long before I came along. What are you talking about? Ask him about Project Phoenix. She shifted, wincing. Ask him why those women really disappeared. Ask him why he married you in the first place. My blood ran cold. What does that mean? It means, she reached for something under her pillow, that you're not the hero of this story, journey. You're just another pawn. The flash of metal was my only warning. I lunged backward as the scalpel sliced through the air where my throat had been. Melissa's monitor began screaming as she launched herself from the bed, medical equipment crashing around us. He chose you because you were convenient, she snarled, swinging again. Because your father's company had what Parker Tech needed. I stumbled against the wall as Santos burst in, weapon drawn. Drop it. Tell her. Melissa's eyes were wild, blood seeping through her hospital gown. Tell her about the merger papers her father signed the day before his accident. The scalpel clattered to the floor as she collapsed, orderlies rushing in with restraints. But her words had found their mark more effectively than any blade. My father's death. The convenient timing of meeting Ryan. The rushed marriage that had surprised everyone. All of it suddenly viewed through a new, horrifying lens. Journey? Santos touched my arm. Are you all right? I shook my head, unable to speak. My phone buzzed again, not Ryan's lawyer this time, but Olivia. Found something in Melissa's storage unit, her message read. About your father. You need to see this now. As they wheeled Melissa away, her laughter echoing down the corridor. I realized that my quest for revenge had led me somewhere far darker than I'd imagined. The truth about Ryan, about my father's death, about my entire marriage, it was all connected to something much bigger than a simple affair. And now I had to decide, keep digging and risk losing everything I thought I knew about my life, or walk away and live with the questions forever. The visiting room at the county jail felt smaller than it had any right to be. Ryan sat across from me, the bruises on his face faded to sickly yellows and greens. Between us lay the contents of Olivia's discovery, my father's autopsy report, Project Phoenix files. And a USB drive that had destroyed every certainty I'd ever had about my marriage. How long? My voice didn't shake. I was proud of that. Journey. How long were you planning it before my father died? He leaned forward, chains rattling against the metal table. It wasn't supposed to happen that way. The brake lines. That wasn't part of the plan. But marrying his daughter was? I pushed the merger documents toward him. Making sure his company fell into Parker Tech's hands after his convenient accident. I loved you. His eyes met mine, and for the first time in 12 years, I saw real desperation there. That wasn't part of the plan either. Don't. I stood up abruptly, my chair scraping against concrete. Don't you dare pretend. It's the truth. He tried to reach for me, but the chains stopped him. Everything changed after I met you. Why do you think Melissa targeted me? She knew I'd stopped pushing forward with Phoenix because of you. The door opened behind me. Detective Santos stepped in, holding a phone. We found Sarah Mitchell. My heart stopped. Alive? She nodded. In witness protection. She's willing to testify about Phoenix, about Parker Tech's involvement in corporate espionage. And about your father's murder. Ryan's face went slack. You don't understand what you're doing. These people. These people? I laughed, the sound brittle as glass. You mean your father? Dylan's fingerprints are all over these documents. He ordered the hit on my father, didn't he? And you just played along, seduced the grieving daughter to keep her quiet. To protect you. He slammed his hands down, making Santos step forward. Once you were part of the family, you were safe. As long as you didn't know. Safe? I pulled out my phone, showing him the security footage from my house. Is that why Melissa broke in last night? Why she tried to access my father's old files? He went very still. When was this? 3 hours ago. Chloe's watching the house now. Waiting. Call her. His voice turned urgent. Now. Get her out of there. They're not after the files, Journey. They're after you. Santos was already on her radio, but I knew it was too late. My phone buzzed with Chloe's text, company's here. Dylan and 3 others. Following the plan. You knew. Ryan's accusation cut through my rising panic. You're using my father's predictability against him. Like father, like son. I gathered the documents, leaving one photo behind, our wedding day. The last picture taken of me smiling genuinely at the man I thought I loved. The difference is, I learned from the best how to play the long game. Journey, please. Real fear crept into his voice. Whatever you're planning is already done. I nodded to Santos, who produced an arrest warrant. The FBI is raiding Parker Tech right now. Every document, every file about Phoenix, about my father. It's all going public. Dylan's walking into a trap, and Melissa's testimony from the hospital was the final nail in the coffin. You'll destroy everything. No, I corrected him quietly. You did that 12 years ago when you chose your father's corruption over the truth. I'm just finishing what you started. My phone buzzed again, the signal. Somewhere across town, Dylan Parker was being led away in handcuffs, his corporate empire crumbling around him. And in a hospital room, Melissa Carter was signing a full confession, her immunity deal secured by the evidence she'd helped me gather. For what it's worth, I said, pausing at the door, I loved you too. That's what made it so easy to make you believe I was still the same naive girl you married. The last thing I saw as the door closed was understanding dawning in his eyes, the realization that his perfect, trusting wife had orchestrated his downfall from the moment she found that first text message, playing every player at their own game. Some might call it revenge. I called it justice. The courtroom emptied slowly, leaving me alone with the echo of the judge's verdict. Guilty on all counts, corporate espionage, conspiracy, murder. The Parker family legacy, dismantled in less than 2 hours. I gathered my belongings, fingers brushing against my father's old watch in my purse. The evidence had proven what I'd suspected. He'd discovered Project Phoenix, threatened to expose it, and paid with his life. Now, 12 years later, justice had finally been served. Miss Parker? I turned to find Lena standing in the doorway, looking smaller somehow without her usual perfect posture and designer clothes. I'm not here to defend them, she said quickly. I needed you to know I had no idea about any of it. I believe you. The words surprised us both with their sincerity. She nodded, twisting her wedding ring, a nervous habit I'd never noticed before. The house in Vermont. The one you loved so much. I'm signing it over to you. Lena. Please. Her voice cracked slightly. Let me do this one thing right. The door opened again before I could respond. Olivia entered, followed by Sarah Mitchell, alive, whole, and ready to rebuild her life now that her testimony had helped bring down Parker Tech. The reporters are waiting, Olivia warned. And Melissa's lawyer called. She wants to meet. No. I shouldered my bag, feeling lighter somehow. Tell her I'm done playing her games. She got her deal, she can live with the consequences of her choices. Just like the rest of us. Lena touched my arm gently as I passed. What will you do now? The question should have felt heavy, but instead it tasted like freedom. My father's company is being restored to its original shareholders. There's work to be done, wrongs to right. Journey. She hesitated. Ryan asked to see you. One last time, before they transfer him. I thought of our last conversation in that prison visiting room, of all the lies and truths tangled together across 12 years of marriage. Of the man I'd loved and the monster he'd protected. Of the naive wife I'd pretended to be while methodically dismantling their empire. Tell him. I smiled, genuine for the first time in months. Tell him I learned from the best. Outside, Chloe waited by her car, holding a thick envelope. The last of the evidence files. Detective Santos says we're officially done. Not quite. I took the envelope, then handed her a different one. The foundation paperwork. For the victims of corporate fraud and whistleblower protection. I need a director I can trust. Her eyes widened. Journey. You stood by me through all of it, I said quietly. Help me make sure no one else has to go through this alone. The late afternoon sun caught the face of my father's watch as I checked the time. Somewhere across town, Dylan Parker was beginning his life sentence. Ryan would soon join him. Melissa's immunity deal would keep her out of prison, but her reputation was destroyed. The mighty had fallen, and the truth had finally come to light. You know, Chloe said as we drove away from the courthouse, most people would feel vindicated right now. Triumphant. I watched the city scroll past, thinking of all the moments that had led to this one. The breakfast I'd been preparing when I found that first text. The family dinner where everything began to unravel. The hospital room where Melissa had finally revealed the truth about my father's death. I don't feel triumphant, I admitted. I feel free. Awake. I turned to her, understanding flowing through me like a river breaking through ice. For 12 years, I lived someone else's version of my life. Now I get to discover who I really am. And who is that? I thought of Lena's gift, the house in Vermont where I'd once dreamed of raising a family. Of Sarah Mitchell, alive and ready to reclaim her story. Of my father's company, waiting to be rebuilt into something honest and true. Someone who knows the difference between revenge and justice, I said finally. And chooses justice every time. The city stretched out before us, full of possibilities and second chances. Not an ending, but a beginning, one entirely of my own making.
I stand in the doorway of the Blackwood mansion, counting the crystal chandeliers, 3 in the foyer alone, and wondering how many years it would take me to afford just one of them on my teacher's salary. Mother Margaret, as she insists I call her, watches me from her perch on the curved staircase. Her silver-streaked hair pulled into an immaculate chignon that probably costs more than my monthly rent. Cecilia, darling, do close the door. You're letting in the riffraff, she says, not bothering to hide her smirk as I fumble with my overnight bag. I'm here because Michael insisted we spend the weekend celebrating his parents' 35th wedding anniversary. It'll be different this time, he promised. They'll warm up to you eventually. Right. And maybe pigs will start doing synchronized swimming in that Olympic-sized pool out back. Thank you for having me, I manage, the words tasting like copper in my mouth. The marble floor echoes my footsteps, broadcasting my presence like an unwanted announcement. Rebecca appears at the top of the stairs, Michael's perfect sister in her perfect Chanel suit, wearing that perfect plastic smile. Oh good, you made it. Mother was just saying how interesting it would be to have you join us this weekend. I bet she was. Interesting like a car crash or a public execution. Where's Michael? I ask, trying to keep my voice steady. Conference call in Father's study, Margaret replies, descending the stairs with the grace of a queen addressing her subjects. Business before pleasure, you understand. Or perhaps you don't, given your profession. There it is. The first dig of what promises to be a weekend full of them. I clutch my bag tighter, my knuckles white against the worn leather. I'll show you to your room, Rebecca offers, though we both know it's not really an offer. The East Wing, Mother? The Blue Guest Room, Margaret corrects, her voice sharp. The East Wing is for family. I follow Rebecca up the stairs, past oil paintings of stern-faced Blackwoods who seem to judge me with their dead eyes. The Blue Guest Room, as it turns out, is at the furthest end of the West Wing, practically in another zip code from Michael's old bedroom. Dinner's at 7, Rebecca announces, hovering in the doorway. Mother expects everyone dressed appropriately. Of course she does. I drop my bag on the bed, which probably costs more than my car. Oh, and Cecilia? Rebecca pauses, her perfectly manicured hand on the doorframe. Try not to embarrass Michael this time. Last Christmas was unfortunate. Before I can respond, she's gone, leaving behind only the echo of her Louboutins on hardwood and the faint scent of Chanel No. 5. I sink onto the bed, pulling out my phone to text Michael, but pause when I hear voices drifting through the heating vent. Margaret's distinctive tone carries clearly. It's time we discussed Michael's future at the company. I won't have that woman derailing everything we've built. Did you know she's been encouraging him to start his own business? In Seattle, of all places. What do you suggest? Rebecca's voice, eager to please. I've already spoken with the board. We're creating a position that will require extensive travel, keeping him busy, away from her influence. She'll either leave on her own or show her true colors trying to stop it. My hands shake as I lower the phone. The perfect mask of civility drops, and suddenly I see everything clearly. This isn't just about acceptance anymore. This is war, and Margaret has just made her first move. Fine. If she wants to play games, I'll play. But I'm not following her rules anymore. I open my suitcase and pull out the black cocktail dress I bought specifically for tonight. Time to show Mother Margaret exactly what kind of woman her son married. The anniversary dinner feels like a minefield where every word could trigger an explosion. I smooth down my black dress, carefully chosen to match Margaret's usual cocktail attire, and watch Michael fidget with his tie across the mahogany dining table. He hasn't met my eyes since he emerged from his father's study. Cecilia, dear, Margaret's voice cuts through the clink of sterling silver, do tell everyone about your little school. It must be so rewarding, shaping young minds on such a modest scale. I take a slow sip of wine, noting how she's seated Michael between herself and Rebecca. Actually, I've just been appointed department head. We're implementing a new curriculum that's being considered for adoption across the district. Rebecca's fork scrapes against her plate. How nice. Though I suppose leadership means something different in the public sector. Speaking of leadership, Margaret interjects, Michael, darling, tell everyone about the Singapore project. My hand tightens around the stem of my wine glass. Singapore. This is the first I'm hearing about it. Michael clears his throat. It's still in the early stages, Mother. Nonsense. The board's already approved your position as project director. 18 months minimum, isn't it? Such an opportunity. The room spins slightly. 18 months. Our plans for Seattle dissolve like sugar in rain. Congratulations, brother dear. Rebecca's smile is razor sharp. Though it must be difficult for you, Cecilia, with Michael away so much already. Actually, I set down my glass with deliberate care. Michael and I have been discussing other opportunities. Closer to home. Margaret's eyes flash. Have you now? Michael, you hadn't mentioned. It's nothing concrete, Michael interrupts, still avoiding my gaze. Just ideas. Ideas can be dangerous things, Margaret says softly. Especially when they come from outside influences. Aunt Helen, silent until now, speaks up from her end of the table. I rather think new ideas are exactly what this family needs. Don't you agree, George? Michael's father grunts noncommittally behind his newspaper, his standard response to family tension. Helen, please, Margaret's tone could freeze hell itself. This is hardly the time to. When is the time, Margaret? I surprised myself by asking. When Michael's safely tucked away in Singapore? When you've managed to schedule every minute of his life without consulting his wife? The silence that follows is deafening. Rebecca looks delighted at my outburst, while Michael seems to be trying to disappear into his chair. I think, Margaret says carefully, that you forget your place in this family, Cecilia. We've welcomed you. Welcomed? I laugh, and it sounds slightly unhinged even to my ears. Is that what you call this? The separate bedroom? The constant reminders of my inadequacy? The secret plans for my husband's future? Cecilia, Michael finally speaks, his voice strained. Can we discuss this later? Later. Always later. I stand, my chair scraping against the floor. Well, I have some news of my own. I've been offered a position too, heading up an educational consulting firm. In Seattle. Margaret's face goes absolutely still. Michael, you didn't tell me. Because he doesn't know, I cut in. I just found out today. Funny how we both seem to be making life-changing decisions without consulting each other. I turn to leave, but pause at the doorway. Oh, and Mother Margaret? Black really isn't your color. You might want to rethink your wardrobe choices. As I stride away, I hear Aunt Helen's rich laugh floating behind me, followed by the distinct sound of Margaret choking on her wine. It's a small victory, but right now, I'll take what I can get. Back in the blue guest room, I pull out my phone and start researching Singapore. If Margaret wants to play hardball, she's about to learn that this public school teacher knows how to swing back. The question is, whose side will Michael choose when the dust settles? A soft knock at my door interrupts my plotting. Cecilia? It's Aunt Helen's voice. I think it's time we had a proper chat about Margaret's other little schemes. There's quite a bit you should know. I smile. Maybe I'm not as alone in this war as I thought. Aunt Helen's revelations hit like dominoes falling in slow motion. We sit in her private study, where even the leather-bound books seem to hold secrets. She slides a manila envelope across her antique desk. Rebecca's been busy, Helen says, tapping the envelope. These are copies of emails between her and several of your colleagues at school. She's been digging. My hands shake as I read. Carefully crafted questions about my teaching credentials. Subtle implications about my relationship with a former principal. Suggestions of misconduct that never happened. She's trying to get me fired? Margaret's idea, Helen says, pouring us both a generous measure of bourbon. She believes financial pressure might encourage you to accept their plans for Michael. The bourbon burns, going down. How long have you known? Long enough to gather proof. Helen's smile is grim. Margaret forgets I'm on the school board's advisory committee. Nothing gets past my desk without my knowledge. A knock interrupts us. Rebecca stands in the doorway, her face falling when she sees me. Oh. I didn't realize you had company, Aunt Helen. Just discussing educational policy, I say sweetly, raising my glass. You seem quite interested in that lately. Color drains from her face. She recovers quickly, but I catch the flash of panic in her eyes. I'm sure I don't know what you mean. No? Should we call Dr. Stevens at Madison High? Or perhaps Principal Rodriguez? Rebecca's perfectly manicured hands clench. You're delusional. Mother was right about you, you'll say anything to cause trouble. Funny, I have emails that suggest otherwise. I pull out my phone, watching her face. Should I forward them to Michael? I'm sure he'd be fascinated by your creative writing skills. You wouldn't dare. But her voice wavers. Try me. She spins on her heel and storms out. Seconds later, we hear her heels clicking rapidly toward Margaret's wing. Well, Helen says, that should make dinner interesting. I need to find Michael. I stand, but Helen catches my arm. Wait. There's more. She pulls out another document. Margaret's been transferring company shares to Rebecca. Shares that were promised to Michael. My stomach drops. Does he know? Michael sees what he wants to see. But if he loses those shares, your Seattle dreams die with them. I'm halfway to Michael's study when I hear raised voices from Margaret's sitting room. I pause, pressing close to the wall. She's becoming a liability, Margaret hisses. The board won't approve Michael's promotion if there's any hint of scandal. I told you she had proof, Rebecca sounds panicked. She's going to tell Michael everything. Let her try. Who do you think he'll believe? The woman who's given him everything, or the gold digger trying to tear him away from his family? I've heard enough. I push open the door, making both women jump. Why don't we ask him? Margaret recovers first. Eavesdropping now? How predictably common. Common enough to record everything you just said. I hold up my phone. Along with proof of Rebecca's little smear campaign. You wouldn't dare destroy this family, Margaret says, but there's fear beneath her certainty. You're right. I wouldn't. I move closer, lowering my voice. But I will destroy you, Margaret. Every carefully constructed lie, every manipulation, every scheme, I'll expose it all unless you back off. Mother? Michael's voice from the doorway makes us all turn. What's going on? The moment stretches like glass about to shatter. I look at my husband's confused face, at Margaret's calculating eyes, at Rebecca's barely concealed panic, and make my decision. Your mother was just explaining why she's been transferring your company shares to Rebecca. The words fall like bombs in the quiet room. Weren't you, Mother Margaret? Michael steps forward, frowning. What shares? I pull out Helen's document, handling the truth like the weapon it is. Sometimes the best revenge isn't about destroying your enemies, it's about forcing them to destroy themselves. Perhaps, I say softly, we should all sit down. There's quite a lot to discuss. 3 days after the confrontation, Michael still won't look at me during breakfast. The morning sun streams through the conservatory windows, turning everything golden except the cold space between us. His coffee goes untouched, his phone a shield against conversation. The board meeting's today, I say, breaking our careful silence. He adjusts his tie, the blue one Margaret gave him last Christmas. I know. Will you vote against the share transfer? It's complicated. His standard answer these days. Everything's complicated when you're choosing between your wife and your mother. Like Singapore is complicated? I push my plate away. Or like Rebecca trying to get me fired is complicated? She's my sister, Cecilia. His voice carries an edge of warning. And mother. She had her reasons. For stealing your inheritance? For protecting the company. He finally meets my eyes. Did you ever think that maybe she's right? That your plans for Seattle might be impulsive? The betrayal hits like ice water. Before I can respond, Rebecca appears in the doorway, perfectly composed in her executive suit. Michael, Mother needs you in the study. The lawyers are here. He stands immediately, always the obedient son. At the door, he pauses. We'll talk later. Will we? But he's already gone. Rebecca lingers, satisfaction radiating from her like perfume. Oh, don't look so wounded, Cecilia. Did you really think exposing Mother's plans would change anything? Michael knows where his loyalty belongs. With his wife? With his family. She steps closer, voice dropping. But here's what I don't understand, why are you still fighting? You've lost. Michael's already signed the preliminary paperwork for Singapore. My coffee cup clatters against its saucer. What? Last night. Mother had the contracts ready. Her smile is pure venom. 18 months just became 3 years. Congratulations on your long-distance marriage. I'm out of my chair before I realize I'm moving, but Aunt Helen's voice stops me at the door. Rebecca, darling, I believe the lawyers were asking for you as well. Helen sweeps in, elegant as always. Something about those emails you sent to Madison High? Rebecca's face pales. You wouldn't dare. The school board takes harassment very seriously. Helen examines her manicure. As does the SEC when it comes to undisclosed share transfers. Such messy business, don't you think? Rebecca flees, leaving behind the scent of fear and Chanel. He signed? My voice sounds distant to my own ears. Helen touches my arm. Not yet. But he will, unless. Unless what? Unless you're willing to play their game better than they do. She pulls out her phone, showing me an email. Margaret's not the only one with connections to the board. There's a meeting this afternoon at Blackwood Industries. I can get you in. To do what? To remind them that secrets have a way of becoming scandals. She smiles, but it's not her usual warm expression. The question is, are you ready to stop playing defense? I think about Michael's averted eyes, Rebecca's smirk, Margaret's endless machinations. Something shifts inside me, like a lock clicking open. What do you need me to do? Helen's smile widens. Wear that black dress again. And bring the files I gave you, all of them. As I head upstairs to change, I catch a glimpse of myself in one of the mansion's countless mirrors. I barely recognize the woman staring back. There's something harder in her eyes, something that looks remarkably like Margaret. My phone buzzes with a text from Michael, we need to talk before the board meeting. I type back, yes, we do. But not on your mother's terms. The response is immediate, what does that mean? I don't answer. Let him worry for a change. Let them all worry. Because Helen's right, it's time to stop reacting and start acting. If Margaret wants to teach me about power, she's about to learn I'm a very quick study. I smooth down my dress and check my reflection one final time. The woman in the mirror smiles back, and this time, I recognize her perfectly. The Blackwood Industries boardroom feels like a courtroom, all mahogany panels and judgment. I sit beside Helen, watching Margaret hold court at the head of the table, her perfectly coiffed hair catching the afternoon light. Michael won't meet my eyes from his position at her right hand. The Singapore expansion represents a crucial step for our family's legacy, Margaret announces, sliding contracts across the polished surface. Michael's leadership role is essential too. Before we continue, Helen interrupts, her voice silk over steel. The board should review these documents. She produces a thick folder, particularly the sections regarding unauthorized share transfers and potential SEC violations. The room temperature drops 10 degrees. Margaret's smile freezes. This isn't the time, Rebecca starts, but Helen cuts her off. It's exactly the time. Before anyone signs anything, they should know exactly what they're signing away. She turns to the board members. Or who they're signing it to. I stand, my hands steady as I distribute copies of the evidence. You'll find detailed records of every manipulated transaction, every buried audit report, and every threat made to ensure compliance. Cecilia. Michael's voice cracks. What are you doing? Protecting you. The words taste bitter. Someone has to. Margaret rises slowly, a queen whose throne is wobbling. These accusations are groundless. The board knows my dedication to this company. And to your children? I pull out my phone, playing the recording from her sitting room. Her voice fills the space, let her try. Who do you think he'll believe? The woman who's given him everything, or the gold digger trying to tear him away from his family? The board members shift uncomfortably. One begins flipping through the documents with increased interest. You recorded me? Margaret's composure slips. In my own home? I learned from the best. I meet her gaze. Didn't you teach Rebecca to document everything? Including her attempts to sabotage my career? Rebecca pales. Mother, I can explain. Silence. Margaret's command cracks like a whip. She turns to Michael. Surely you won't let your wife destroy everything we've built? Michael stares at the contract before him, then at the evidence folder. His hand trembles slightly as he reaches for his pen. Sign it, Margaret urges. Prove where your loyalty lies. Don't. My voice is barely a whisper. Not for her. Not like this. The pen hovers. Time stretches like taffy. If you sign, I continue, you're choosing her control over our future. Over us. He's choosing family, Rebecca snaps. No. Helen's calm voice cuts through the tension. He's choosing fear. Just like you did, Rebecca. Just like everyone does when Margaret holds the reins. Michael looks up, really looks at me for the first time in days. Something shifts in his expression. Mother, he says quietly, what did you do to Cecilia's job? Margaret's mask slips further. Everything I did was to protect you. From what? The pen clatters to the table. From happiness? From independence? From love? From her. Margaret points at me, composure shattering. She'll take you away, change you, destroy everything I've sacrificed to build. The only thing being destroyed here is your control. I gather the contracts. The board has copies of everything now. Your choice, Margaret, step down gracefully or let them discover exactly how deep your manipulation runs. The silence is deafening. Board members whisper among themselves. Rebecca stares at her hands. Michael stands slowly, deliberately moving to my side. Margaret's eyes narrow to slits. You'll regret this. Both of you. No, I say softly. The only regret would be letting you win. I turn to leave, Michael's hand finding mine. At the door, I pause. Oh, And Margaret? The Singapore project is cancelled. Michael's talents are needed closer to home, in Seattle. Her scream of rage follows us down the hallway, but I don't look back. Some storms you walk away from, knowing the destruction they leave behind is their own punishment. Michael squeezes my hand. We have a lot to talk about. Yes, I agree. But not here. Not in her house. Not anymore. The sun hits our faces as we exit the building, and for the first time in months, I can breathe freely. Sometimes winning isn't about destroying your enemies, it's about freeing yourself from their power to hurt you. The annual Blackwood Charity Gala feels like a funeral where everyone's still pretending to smile. I adjust my emerald dress, chosen to match the family colors, one last attempt at belonging, and watch Margaret work the room. She hasn't spoken to me since the board meeting, but her eyes follow my every move. Michael squeezes my hand. We can leave if you want. And give her the satisfaction? I force a smile as another board member passes. Not a chance. Rebecca approaches, champagne sloshing dangerously in her glass. Mother wants everyone gathered for the announcements. Of course she does. I release Michael's hand. Go. Your mother's waiting. He hesitates, but duty wins out. Always does. I find Helen by the bar, her face grim. Something's wrong, she whispers. Margaret's been meeting with the other board members privately all week. Before I can respond, Margaret taps her glass. The room falls silent. Family, friends, distinguished guests, she begins, her voice carrying that perfect mix of authority and warmth I could never master. As you know, recent events have forced us to re-evaluate certain company positions. My stomach drops. Therefore, it gives me great pleasure to announce that Michael will be taking over as CEO of our European division, effective immediately. The room erupts in applause. Michael looks stunned. Mother, I never agreed. The board voted this morning, Margaret continues smoothly. Your flight leaves tomorrow night. Rebecca will handle the transition here. The room spins. Europe. Not Singapore, Europe. Further away, longer term, more permanent. You can't do this, I step forward, my voice shaking. The board already rejected. The board, Margaret's smile turns razor sharp, reconsidered after reviewing certain historical documents. Particularly those regarding your father's involvement in the Mason scandal 10 years ago. The air leaves my lungs. My father's bankruptcy, the accusations of fraud, the years of rebuilding our family's reputation, how did she know? It would be unfortunate if those details became public, Margaret continues softly. Especially given your new position at the school board. Helen moves to intervene, but I wave her off. This is between me and Margaret now. So this is your revenge? My laugh sounds hollow even to me. Blackmail? This is protection. My son deserves better than a gold digger with a criminal's daughter. The room has gone deadly quiet. Even Rebecca looks uncomfortable. Michael, I turn to him, pleading. You can't let her. But his face tells me everything. The same conflict-avoidant expression, the same inability to stand against his mother's will. It's a good opportunity, he says weakly. Maybe you could join me later? Something breaks inside me. Not my heart, that shattered weeks ago. No, this is different. This is the last thread of hope snapping. No, I say quietly. I won't. Margaret's triumph radiates like a nuclear blast. Well, then. I believe that settles. Because I'm done. I turn to address the room. I'm done playing your games, Margaret. Done watching you manipulate everyone around you. Done pretending this is about family when it's really about control. Security, Margaret snaps her fingers. Please escort my daughter-in-law out. Don't bother. I pull off my wedding ring, the Blackwood family heirloom that never quite fit, and place it on the nearest table. I know the way out. I make it to the foyer before Michael catches up. Cecilia, wait. We can figure this out. No, we can't. I don't turn around. Because you'll never choose me over her. And I'll never be the wife who accepts that. Please. Goodbye, Michael. The night air hits my face as I push through the mansion's doors. Behind me, I hear Margaret's voice rising in victory, already spinning the story of how she saved her son from an unsuitable marriage. Let her have her win. Let her keep her control and her manipulations and her perfect family facade. Because tomorrow, the real war begins. And this time, I'm fighting for myself. I pull out my phone and dial Helen's number. It's time for Plan B. Sometimes you have to lose everything to remember who you really are. 3 days after I walk out of the gala, Helen's plan springs into action like a perfectly timed bomb. I stride into Blackwood Industries' emergency board meeting, my heels clicking against marble, every step echoing with purpose. Margaret's face turns ashen when she sees me. This is a closed meeting, she snaps. Not anymore. I drop a thick folder onto the conference table. The SEC might disagree, given what's in here. Rebecca jumps up. You can't just. Sit down, Helen commands from the doorway. All of you need to hear this. Michael enters last, looking between his mother and me with dawning comprehension. What's going on? Show them, Helen nods. I open the folder, spreading out documents like playing cards. Financial records. Real ones, not the doctored versions Margaret's been showing the board. 10 years of systematic fraud, all carefully hidden behind shell companies and offshore accounts. Lies, Margaret hisses, but her hands shake as she reaches for the papers. Truth, I correct. Your mistake was threatening my father. It made me curious about what else you might be hiding. Helen's been collecting evidence for years, waiting for someone brave enough to use it. The board members murmur, passing documents between them. Margaret's carefully constructed world begins to crumble. You ungrateful little. Careful, mother, I say softly. The walls have ears. Just like your sitting room, your office, your private phone line. She lunges for her phone, but Helen's faster. Looking for this? She holds up Margaret's cell. Such interesting conversations you've had lately. Especially about those offshore transfers. Michael, Margaret turns to her last defense. You can't let them destroy everything we've built. We? Michael's voice cracks. Or you? How long have you been stealing from the company? From me? Everything I did was for you. No. He steps away from her reaching hand. Everything you did was for control. And I let you have it because it was easier than fighting. But I'm done being your puppet. Rebecca stands suddenly. Mother, tell them about the Thompson account. Show them you had authorization. Sit down, Rebecca, Margaret commands, but her voice has lost its power. No. Rebecca's face crumples. I forged those documents for you. I lied to the auditors. I did everything you asked, and you're still going to let me take the fall, aren't you? The room erupts in chaos. Board members shouting, Rebecca crying, Margaret trying to maintain order. But her kingdom is falling, one revelation at a time. Enough! My voice cuts through the noise. Here's what happens next. Margaret steps down immediately. All stolen funds are returned. The board implements new oversight measures. Or. Margaret's eyes narrow. Or these documents go public. Every scheme, every manipulation, every crime exposed. Your choice. You would destroy this company just for revenge? No. I meet her gaze steadily. I would save it from you. That's the difference between us, Margaret. You destroy what you claim to love. I protect what matters, even if it costs me everything. Michael moves to my side, his shoulder brushing mine. Sign the resignation, Mother. It's over. Margaret looks around the room, seeing only hostile faces. Even Rebecca won't meet her eyes. Her empire crumbles in real time. Fine. She picks up a pen with trembling fingers. You win. No one wins here, I say quietly. But maybe now everyone can heal. As Margaret signs away her power, I feel nothing but emptiness. This victory tastes like ashes, but sometimes burning it all down is the only way to build something new. Michael touches my arm. Stay. Please. We can start over. I look at him, really look at him, and see both the man I loved and the boy still seeking his mother's approval. Some things can't be fixed, Michael. But they can be finished. I turn to leave, but Margaret's broken voice stops me. I was protecting my family. No, I say without turning back. You were protecting your fear. There's a difference. The door closes behind me with a final click, leaving behind the ruins of an empire and the possibility of something better rising from its ashes. The Seattle rain feels different from the carefully manicured precipitation that waters the Blackwood Estate's gardens. Here, it's wild and honest, much like the life I'm building from the wreckage of my marriage. I unlock the door to my new consulting firm, Educational Futures, and find Helen already inside, reviewing blueprints for our expansion. The board approved your proposal, she says without looking up. Full funding for the Inner City Education Initiative. And Margaret? Still trying to maintain control from her house arrest. Rebecca's testimony sealed her fate. Helen finally meets my eyes. Michael asked about you again. Of course he did. The divorce papers sit unsigned on my desk, his signature line blank after 3 attempts to deliver them. He's different now, Helen continues. Standing up to what's left of Margaret's influence. Leading the company's rehabilitation. Good for him. I mean it, mostly. But some bridges can't be unburned. A knock interrupts us. Rebecca stands in the doorway, looking smaller without her designer armor. Your secretary said I could come up. Rebecca. I keep my voice neutral. This is unexpected. I'm not staying. She clutches her purse like a shield. I just needed to say something. I wait, remembering a time when her silence was a weapon. Now it feels like surrender. You were right, she says finally. About Mother. About everything. I spent so long trying to be what she wanted that I forgot who I was. And now? Now I'm trying to remember. She pulls out an envelope. These are my shares in the company. I want you to use them for your education program. Rebecca. Please. Let me do one right thing in all this mess. I take the envelope, feeling the weight of transformation in my hands. What will you do? Start over. Somewhere new. A ghost of her old smile appears. Maybe even somewhere where it rains. After she leaves, Helen pours us both coffee. You know, revenge doesn't usually end with redemption. This wasn't about revenge. I watch Seattle's skyline emerge from the morning mist. Not really. It was about breaking free. All of us. My phone buzzes, Michael's daily message. But today's is different, I signed the papers. They're with your lawyer. I hope you find what you're looking for. Something shifts in my chest, not quite peace, but closer than I've felt in months. I'm leaving too, Helen announces suddenly. The board can handle the transition without me. There's a literary festival in Paris I've always wanted to attend. Running away? No. She smiles. Running toward something. Isn't that what you taught us all? The rain intensifies, washing the windows clean. Below, Rebecca's car pulls away from the curb, heading toward whatever future she's chosen. Somewhere across the city, Michael sits in his office, finally standing on his own. And in her monitored mansion, Margaret faces the consequences of her choices. My phone buzzes again. A text from my father, proud of you, kid. Always have been. I touch the window, feeling Seattle's pulse through the glass. This city doesn't care about family names or inherited power. It only asks what you're building next. You know what the strangest part is? I tell Helen. I thought taking Margaret down would feel like victory. But it just feels like freedom, she finishes. Messy, complicated freedom. I nod, thinking of all the perfectly arranged gardens and carefully controlled lives I've left behind. Here, things grow wild and true, reaching for light through the rain. So, Helen raises her coffee cup. What's next? I look at my reflection in the window, no longer the outsider trying to fit into someone else's world, but something entirely new. Something real. Everything, I answer. Everything's next. The rain continues falling, washing away the last traces of the woman who once tried to please the Blackwoods. Let Margaret keep her mansion and her memories. I'll take the wild unknown any day. Sometimes the best revenge isn't destroying your enemies. It's becoming exactly who you were meant to be, without their permission or approval. I pick up my phone and delete Michael's number. It's time to write my own story.
The steady beep of monitors was the first thing I heard. Then came the whispers. Hushed voices discussing my condition as if I wasn't there. My eyelids felt like they were made of lead, but I forced them open anyway. The fluorescent lights above me were harsh, unforgiving. My name is Lexi, and I just woke up from a year-long coma to an empty room. Oh my goodness, she's awake. A nurse rushed to my bedside, her face a mixture of shock and joy. Can you hear me, sweetie? Blink twice if you can understand me. I blinked twice, my throat too dry to form words. The nurse, her name tag read Sarah, quickly brought me water with a straw. Where? I managed to croak out, "Where's my family?" Sarah's smile faltered for just a moment. "Let me call the doctor first, okay? He needs to examine you." As she turned to leave, I caught fragments of conversation from the hallway. Father's condition is getting worse. They stopped visiting months ago. Said she was just a burden. The words hit me like physical blows. My family had abandoned me. The same family that used to crowd around the dinner table every Sunday, laughing at Dad's terrible jokes. The same sister who used to crawl into my bed during thunderstorms. "Lexi," Dr. Matthews entered, clipboard in hand. "This is remarkable. Your vital signs are strong, and your preliminary responses are very encouraging." "How long?" I asked, my voice stronger now. "You've been in a coma for 13 months, he replied gently. "The car accident was severe, but you've made an incredible recovery." "My family," I started but couldn't finish. Dr. Matthews' expression turned uncomfortable. "Would you like me to contact them? When was the last time they visited?" He hesitated, flipping through his charts unnecessarily. "Your sister Olive stopped by about 7 months ago. Your parents, it's been longer." The door burst open, and Robbie, my childhood best friend, stood there panting. "I came as soon as Sarah called me," he said, rushing to my side. "God, Lexi, I can't believe you're finally awake." His familiar face crumpled when he saw my tears. "They really stopped coming, didn't they?" I whispered. Robbie took my hand, his grip warm and steady. "I'm so sorry, Lex. Your mom, she said it was too hard seeing you like this. Olive got that fancy new job in marketing, and your dad..." He trailed off. "What about my dad?" "He's sick, Lexi. Some rare blood condition. They've been focused on that for the past few months." I laughed bitterly. "So they replaced their broken daughter with a sick father? Seems fair." Don't, Robbie warned. Don't go down that path. You need to focus on getting better. But as I lay there, listening to Robbie catch me up on 13 months of missed life, I couldn't help but remember the last conversation I'd had with Olive before the accident. "You're always Mom and Dad's favorite," she'd said, jealousy clear in her voice. "Little Miss Perfect with her medical degree and her volunteer work." "That's not true," I'd protested. "They love us both equally." Funny how things change. Now I was the discarded one, the burden they'd rather forget. Sarah returned with more water and a sympathetic smile. "Your cousin Leah called. She's flying in tomorrow to see you." At least someone still cared. "Oh, and Lexi?" Sarah added, pausing at the door. "I overheard Dr. Matthews talking about your father's condition. Apparently they're having trouble finding a blood match for the treatment he needs. Rare blood type, they said." Something clicked in my mind. Dad and I shared the same rare blood type, B negative. It had been a running joke in our family, how we were literally connected by blood while Olive and Mom were both O positive. I caught Robbie's eye, and I could tell he was thinking the same thing. The irony was almost too perfect. The daughter they abandoned might be their only hope. "Don't even think about it," Robbie said firmly. "You need to recover first." But I was already thinking about it, thinking about how they'd left me here, alone, for months, thinking about Olive's spite, Mom's weakness, Dad's indifference. "I'm not thinking anything," I lied, closing my eyes. "I'm just tired." As I drifted off to sleep, I couldn't help but smile slightly. They had no idea what was coming. Sometimes karma needs a little help, and I was more than willing to be its instrument. Let them wonder. Let them worry. Let them realize exactly what they threw away when they decided I wasn't worth their time anymore. After all, revenge is a dish best served with a side of salvation. Physical therapy was hell, but the whispers hurt more. Every time a nurse or orderly passed my room, I caught fragments of conversations about my family. Today's session was particularly brutal, both physically and emotionally. "Careful with that leg," my therapist Jake instructed as I gripped the parallel bars. "You've made amazing progress this week, but let's not push too hard." "I need to push," I grunted, forcing my trembling legs to take another step. "I want out of here." "Your body needs time to—" "Time," I snapped. "I've lost 13 months of my life. I don't have time." The door opened and Leah burst in, her curly hair wild as always. "Look who's up and walking." I nearly collapsed with relief at seeing my cousin. Jake helped me into the wheelchair and Leah shooed him away, promising to return me to my room safely. "Spill it," I demanded once we were alone in the hallway. What really happened while I was out? Leah's usually cheerful face darkened. It wasn't immediate, you know. The first few months, they were here constantly. Olive took leave from work, your mom barely left your side. What changed? Olive got promoted. Big fancy position, lots of responsibility. She started coming less, saying she was too busy. Then your dad got sick and... Leah's hands tightened on the wheelchair handles. Your mom just gave up on you. Said she couldn't watch both her husband and daughter waste away. And Olive? Leah's silence told me everything. "Just say it," I pressed. "She told your mom you were a burden, that they needed to focus on Dad because he actually had a chance of getting better." Leah's voice cracked. "I'm so sorry, Lexi. I tried to talk sense into them, but they wouldn't listen." We reached my room, and Leah helped me into bed. A nurse came in with my evening medication, her eyes darting between us nervously. "Oh," the nurse said, "I should mention that your sister called earlier. She asked about your condition." "Did she now?" I raised an eyebrow. Funny how she couldn't be bothered to actually visit. The nurse fidgeted with my IV line. She seemed concerned about your father's treatment options. "I bet she was," I muttered. After the nurse left, Leah perched on the edge of my bed. "There's something else you should know," she said quietly. "Something I overheard your mom say to Olive once." "What?" "She said you were never supposed to happen, that you were an unplanned surprise that changed all their plans." The words hit me like a physical blow. Well, that explains a lot. "No, you don't understand." Leah leaned forward. "Your mom was told she couldn't have more children after Olive. You were their miracle baby. They were thrilled when they found out about you." "Some miracle," I scoffed. "Look how quickly they threw me away." A commotion in the hallway caught our attention. Through the door's window, I saw Robbie arguing with someone. Then Olive's voice, sharp and clear, "I have a right to see my sister." You lost that right 7 months ago, Robbie shot back. I grabbed Leah's arm. I don't want to see her. Not yet. Leah nodded and hurried to the door, slipping out to join Robbie. I could hear their voices through the thin walls. She's resting, Leah said firmly. Doctor's orders. I need to talk to her about Dad, Olive insisted. The doctors say he needs a specific blood type. B negative, Robbie cut in, just like Lexi. The silence that followed was deafening. How did you... Olive's voice trailed off. Unlike some people, I've been here every day. Robbie's words were ice cold. I know everything about Lexi's condition, including her blood type. Then you know she might be able to help Dad. Might be able to? Leah's voice rose. She's your sister, not a spare parts warehouse. Their voices faded as they moved down the hallway, but I'd heard enough. I pulled out my phone, Robbie had brought it yesterday, and started researching blood disorders and donation procedures. A text from an unknown number lit up my screen. I'm sorry about everything. Please help Dad. Olive. I stared at the message until the screen went dark. They hadn't cared if I lived or died for months, but now that they needed something from me, suddenly I existed again. Game on, I whispered to my empty room. Let's see how sorry you really are. I had what they needed. The question was, how far would they go to get it? And more importantly, how far was I willing to go to make them understand exactly what they'd done? The answer, I was beginning to realize, was very far indeed. 3 days after Olive's attempted visit, I was strong enough to walk short distances unassisted. That's when they finally showed up, all of them. I was sitting in the hospital garden with Robbie when I saw them approaching. Mom, looking older than I remembered, Dad noticeably thinner and leaning on a cane, and Olive wearing an expensive suit that screamed corporate success. Ready? Robbie whispered. I squeezed his hand. As I'll ever be. Mom reached us first, arms outstretched for a hug I didn't return. Her hands dropped awkwardly to her sides. Lexi, she breathed. You look so well. Amazing what proper care can do, Robbie said pointedly. When people actually show up. Dad coughed weakly. Son, this is a family matter. Family? Robbie laughed harshly. Where was this family for the past 7 months? That's enough. Olive stepped forward. We're here now. I finally spoke, my voice steady. Why are you here exactly? The silence that followed was telling. Mom fidgeted with her purse strap. Dad studied the ground, and Olive had always been the bold one. Dad needs help, she said bluntly. His condition is getting worse, and the doctors say he needs a blood match for regular transfusions and possibly bone marrow. And let me guess, I'm a match? You're the only match they've found, Mom interjected quickly. We've tested everyone else in the family. I stood up slowly, proud that my legs didn't shake. So when I needed you, I was a burden. But now that you need me, I'm family again? That's not fair, Olive protested. We were dealing with a lot? I took a step toward her. I was in a coma, fighting for my life, and you told Mom I was a burden. I never... Don't lie to me. My voice rose. The nurses heard you. Leah heard you. You wanted them to focus on your career and Dad's health, so you convinced them to abandon me. Dad tried to step between us. Sweetheart, please. Don't sweetheart me, I snapped. You don't get to play concerned father now. Where were you when I needed you? We were scared. Mom's voice cracked. Seeing you like that day after day, not knowing if you'd ever wake up. So you gave up on me? The words tasted bitter. Decided I wasn't worth the effort anymore? Olive's professional facade cracked. That's not what happened. I was trying to protect them. They were falling apart watching you, and then Dad got sick, and I had to do something. You did something all right, Robbie muttered. You convinced them to throw away their daughter. A nurse appeared in the garden doorway. Ms. Lexi, your physical therapy session is in 5 minutes. I'll be right there, I called back, grateful for the escape. Please, Dad's voice was weak. We need to discuss the donation. No, I cut him off. We don't, not today. I just woke up from a coma, remember? I need to focus on my recovery. But Dad doesn't have much time, Olive insisted. I turned to her, letting all my hurt and anger show. Funny how time becomes important when it's someone you actually care about. Mom started crying. Dad looked like he'd aged 10 years in 10 minutes. Olive's face was a storm of emotions: guilt, anger, desperation. "I'll think about it," I said finally, "but not because you asked, because unlike some people, I don't abandon family when things get tough." As Robbie helped me back inside, I heard Mom ask tearfully, "What have we done?" In my room, I collapsed onto the bed, emotionally drained. Robbie handed me a folder he'd been keeping in his bag. "What's this?" "Medical records I borrowed from your dad's file," he said. "Thought you might want to know exactly what you're dealing with." I opened the folder, scanning the documents. "His condition is serious." "Yeah," Robbie sat beside me. "But you don't owe them anything, Lex. Whatever you decide, I know what I'm going to do," I interrupted. "I'm going to help him." "What? After everything they—" "Not for them," I said quietly. "For me. Because I need to know I'm better than they are. But they're going to work for it. They're going to understand exactly what they did, and they're going to earn every drop of blood I give them." Robbie studied my face. "You're scary when you're plotting revenge." "It's not revenge." I smiled slightly. "It's justice, with a side of karma." As if on cue, my phone buzzed with a text from Olive. "Please, can we talk? Just us sisters?" I showed Robbie the message. And so it begins. The game was on, and this time I was making the rules. I agreed to meet Olive in the hospital cafeteria, neutral territory. She was already there when I arrived, 2 coffee cups on the table in front of her. "I remember how you take it," she said, pushing 1 cup toward me. 2 sugars, extra cream." "That was before," I said, sitting down. "I take it black now." Her face fell slightly. "Oh, things change, Olive. People change. Sometimes they turn their backs on you when you need them most." She flinched. "I deserve that." "You deserve a lot more than that." I leaned forward. "But you're not here to apologize, are you? You're here about Dad's treatment. Can't it be both?" Her eyes filled with tears. "I miss you, Lexi. I miss my sister." Funny, I missed my sister too, for 13 months. Before she could respond, Leah appeared at our table, dropping a thick manila envelope between us. "What's this?" Olive asked. "Open it," Leah said coldly. Inside were photographs, dozens of them. Me in the hospital bed, tubes everywhere. Daily shots spanning months, showing the gradual disappearance of my family. The final photo showed an empty chair beside my bed, a layer of dust visible on the seat. "I documented everything," Leah said. "Every visit, every absence, every time Lexi's monitors beeped and no one from her family was there to hear them." Olive's hands shook as she looked through the photos. "Why are you showing me these?" "Because you need to understand," I said quietly. "Really understand what you did." "I was trying to protect Mom and Dad," Olive burst out. "You don't know what it was like watching them fall apart. Dad's business was failing, Mom couldn't sleep, and then his diagnosis came." "So you decided I wasn't worth the effort?" "No, I thought if they focused on one crisis at a time." "And I was the crisis you decided to cut loose?" She buried her face in her hands. "I was wrong. I know that now. Now that you need something from me." "That's not fair." "Life's not fair," Leah interjected. "Neither is waking up to find your family gone." A nurse approached our table. "Ms. Lexi, Dr. Matthews wants to discuss your father's treatment options." I stood up. "Duty calls." "Wait," Olive grabbed my arm. "There's something else you should know, about why Mom and Dad—" She trailed off. "Spit it out." "I found Mom's old diary while cleaning their house. You were—" She swallowed hard. "You weren't planned. They were told they couldn't have more kids after me, and when Mom got pregnant with you, it nearly killed her." I yanked my arm away. "So I've been a burden since before I was born? Is that supposed to make me feel better?" "No, they were thrilled when you arrived. Mom wrote about how you were their miracle, their fighter. You survived against all odds then, just like you did now." "Some miracle," I scoffed. "They sure didn't treat me like one." Dr. Matthews was waiting in my room with a stack of papers. "Your father's condition is deteriorating faster than expected," he said without preamble. "If you're willing to be a donor, we need to start the process soon." What exactly would it involve? He explained the procedure: regular blood donations, possible bone marrow transplant, a recovery period for both me and Dad. "It's not a small commitment," he concluded. And if I say no? His expression was grave. Your father's prognosis without a matching donor is not good. I thought about the empty chair in Leah's photos, about Olive's tears and Mom's absence and Dad's weakness, about 13 months of silence. I need time to think, I said. After Dr. Matthews left, Robbie appeared with dinner from the outside world, real food, not hospital fare. Olive cornered me in the parking lot, he said, unpacking containers. She's a mess. Good, Lex. Don't tell me to be the bigger person. They weren't. No, he agreed. They weren't. But you are. You always have been. I picked at my food. If I help Dad, they'll never understand what they did wrong. They'll think everything's forgiven. So make them understand. You have the power here, Lex. Use it. My phone buzzed. A text from Mom. Please come home. We need to talk as a family. Home. As if I still had one with them. But maybe that was the key. Maybe going home was exactly what I needed to do. Not to forgive, but to make them face what they'd done. To make them earn back what they'd thrown away so carelessly. Tell Mom I'll be there tomorrow, I texted back. All of you better be ready to talk. It was time to face my family on my terms. Let them squirm. Let them plead. Let them remember exactly who they abandoned and what that person had become in their absence. Tomorrow would be interesting indeed. The family home looked exactly the same, but walking through the front door felt like entering a stranger's house. Robbie squeezed my hand before leaving me to face this alone. Mom was stress cooking, the kitchen counter covered in cookies and casseroles. Dad sat in his usual armchair looking frail. Olive paced by the window. You came, Mom whispered, wiping her hands on her apron. I said I would. I remained standing, refusing their gestures to sit. Let's get this over with. Would you like some cookies? Mom held out a plate. I made your favorite, double chocolate chip. No, what I'd like is for someone to explain why my family decided I wasn't worth their time anymore. The plate trembled in Mom's hands. Dad cleared his throat. We were weak, he admitted. The medical bills were piling up, the business was failing, and then my diagnosis. So you abandoned your comatose daughter? That was your solution? It was my fault. Olive stepped forward. I convinced them to focus on Dad. I told them, I know what you told them. I cut her off. But they're adults. They made their own choice. Mom set down the cookies with a clatter. You don't understand how hard it was, watching you lie there day after day, not knowing if you'd ever wake up. No, Mom, you don't understand. I slammed my hand on the counter, making her jump. I was alone, fighting for my life while my family decided I wasn't worth the effort. We never stopped loving you, Dad said weakly. Love? I laughed bitterly. Love shows up. Love stays. Love doesn't leave an empty chair collecting dust for 7 months. Olive started crying. We messed up, Lexi. We know that. Please just tell us what we can do to fix this. I pulled out my phone and played a video Leah had recorded. Me in physical therapy, falling repeatedly, crying out in pain, but getting back up every time. Alone. Watch it, I demanded. All of you. Watch what you missed. They did. Mom sobbed. Dad's hands shook. Olive looked like she might be sick. That's what abandonment looks like, I said quietly. That's what your daughter went through while you were all too busy to care. Please, Dad's voice cracked. I know we don't deserve your help, but I'm asking anyway. Not just for me, but for this family. Family? I moved to the mantel, picking up a photo taken just before my accident. This family died the day you all walked away. Then let us build a new one, Mom pleaded. A better one. We'll do anything. Anything? I turned to face them. Okay, here's what's going to happen. I'll help Dad. Not for you, but because I refuse to be like you. But there are conditions. They leaned forward eagerly. First, family therapy. All of us. No excuses. Olive nodded immediately. Mom hesitated but agreed. Dad looked uncomfortable but mumbled his assent. Second, Olive takes a leave of absence from work to help with my physical therapy. Every session. No exceptions. But my job, she started, is more important than your sister? Again? She flushed. No, you're right. I'll do it. Third, Mom moves back home to help care for both me and Dad during recovery. No more running away when things get tough. Mom's hands twisted in her apron. Of course, whatever you need. And finally, I pulled out the medical consent forms. You all understand that this is not forgiveness. This is me choosing to be better than you were. Clear? They nodded, looking appropriately chastened. I'll sign these tomorrow, I said, tucking the forms away, after our first therapy session. As I turned to leave, Olive caught my arm. Wait, there's something else you should see. She led me upstairs to my old room. Inside, everything was exactly as I'd left it, but with one addition. A journal lay open on my bed. I wrote to you, Olive said softly. Every day you were in the coma, even after I stopped visiting. I wrote about everything I couldn't say in person, about how scared I was, how guilty I felt, how much I missed my big sister. I picked up the journal, seeing tear stains on many pages. I'm not showing you this to make excuses, she continued. I need you to know that even when I failed you completely, I never stopped loving you. For the first time since waking up, I felt my anger crack slightly. Not enough to forgive, not yet, but enough to hope that maybe, just maybe, something new could grow from these ashes. Tomorrow, I said firmly. Therapy, 9 a.m., don't be late. As Robbie drove me back to the hospital, I realized that revenge wasn't what I needed anymore. What I needed was justice, and the chance to rebuild something stronger from the ruins of what was lost. But first, they had to earn it. Every single step of the way. The first therapy session was brutal. Dr. Wilson didn't believe in easing into things. Virginia, she addressed my mother, why don't you explain to Lexi exactly when you decided to stop visiting? Mom twisted her tissue into shreds. It was after Dad's diagnosis. I felt overwhelmed. Overwhelmed? I echoed. Try being in a coma. That's not fair, Olive interjected. Fair? Dr. Wilson raised an eyebrow. Let's talk about fair, Olive. You told your parents your sister was a burden. Would you say that was fair? The silence was deafening. I was trying to be practical, Olive whispered. Practical? Dad's voice cracked. Our daughter was fighting for her life. Oh, now you care? I shot back. Where was this concern 7 months ago? Dr. Wilson held up her hand. Let's focus on one relationship at a time. Olive, you seem to have strong feelings about your sister's accident. Why don't you elaborate? Olive's professional facade crumbled. Because it should have been me, she burst out. I was supposed to be driving that night. We were supposed to switch, but I had that stupid presentation. The room went still. What? I breathed. You took my shift driving Mom to her doctor's appointment because I was too busy with work. Olive was crying now. The drunk driver that hit you, he would have hit me instead. Mom made a choked sound. Why didn't you tell us? Because I couldn't face it. Olive stood up, pacing. My sister was dying because I was too selfish to drive my own mother. And then when she needed us most, I convinced everyone to abandon her because I couldn't bear the guilt of seeing her every day. Dr. Wilson handed her a tissue. And how do you feel now? Like the worst sister in the world, Olive whispered. Before I could respond, a nurse burst into the room. Mr. Santos, your test results just came back. The doctor needs to see you immediately. Dad struggled to his feet, Mom rushing to help him. His face had gone gray. Go, Dr. Wilson said. We'll continue this next session. In Dad's hospital room, his doctor didn't sugarcoat it. The disease is progressing faster than we anticipated. Without immediate intervention. How long? Mom's voice shook. Weeks, maybe days. Without treatment. All eyes turned to me. I'll do it, I said quietly. Start the procedures tomorrow. The doctor nodded and left to make arrangements. Mom collapsed into a chair, crying. Dad reached for my hand. Lexi, Don't. I pulled away. This doesn't fix anything. Olive followed me into the hallway. Why are you helping us? After everything we did? Because that's what family is supposed to do, I said bitterly. Something you all seem to have forgotten. Robbie appeared with coffee and a concerned look. Everything okay? No, I said honestly. Nothing's okay. That night, unable to sleep, I found myself in the hospital chapel. Not praying, just thinking. Leah found me there. Olive told me about the driving shift, she said, sitting beside me. Doesn't change what they did. No, but it explains some things. Leah pulled something from her bag, a small worn notebook. Found this in your mom's room while helping her pack. You should read it. It was Mom's diary. I opened to a random page. Watched Lexi today. The doctors say there's no change, but I swear I saw her finger move. Olive says I'm imagining things, that I need to accept reality. But how do you accept that your miracle baby, the one who wasn't supposed to exist, might never wake up? Maybe Olive's right. Maybe it's kinder to let go. But every time I try, I remember holding her for the first time. This tiny fighter who survived against all odds. Stop. I closed the book. I can't. They broke, Leah said gently. They broke badly and they handled it terribly. But they're trying to put the pieces back together now. What if I don't want them to? Then that's your choice. But ask yourself, are you refusing to help rebuild because you can't forgive them, or because you're afraid to? Before I could answer, my phone buzzed. A text from Olive. Found something in Dad's study you need to see. Come home when you can? I showed Leah the message. Go, she said. Whatever it is, you need to know. As I left the chapel, I realized something. Sometimes the hardest part of revenge isn't executing it. It's knowing when to let it go. But I wasn't quite ready for that. Not yet. First, I needed to see what other secrets my family had been keeping. Olive was waiting in Dad's study when I arrived, a dusty box on the desk between us. Found this while cleaning, she said, opening it. Dad kept everything about your accident. Inside were newspaper clippings, medical reports, and a stack of unopened letters. I picked one up. It was addressed to me, in Dad's handwriting. He wrote to you every week, Olive explained, but he never sent them, said he lost the right. I opened the most recent one, dated just before my awakening. My dearest Lexi, they say the treatment isn't working. Maybe it's karma. I abandoned my daughter and now I'm running out of time. I don't deserve your help, but I hope someday you'll understand why we broke. Stop. I pushed the letter away. I can't. There's more. Olive pulled out a USB drive. Security footage from your hospital room. Dad paid extra to keep it. She plugged it into the computer. The video showed Dad sitting by my bed at 3 a.m., long after they'd supposedly stopped visiting. I'm so sorry, sweetheart, Video Dad whispered, holding my hand. I'm not strong enough to watch both my girls suffer. Please forgive me. Turn it off, I demanded. He came every night for months, Olive said quietly, after everyone thought he'd stopped. Mom doesn't even know. Why are you showing me this? Because tomorrow you're donating blood to save him, and you deserve to know the whole truth. We didn't just abandon you, we abandoned ourselves. The doorbell rang. Mom rushed in, panic on her face. Dad's worse, she said. They've moved up the procedure. They need you at the hospital now. The next hour was a blur of medical forms and prep work. As they hooked me up to begin the blood donation, Dad was wheeled into the adjacent room. Lexi, he called weakly. Wait. I turned, one arm already connected to the machine. I need to tell you. He struggled to sit up. The night of your accident, I was supposed to call you, warn you about the storm. What? I got busy with work. Forgot to call, if I had. His monitors started beeping erratically. Mr. Santos, please stay calm, a nurse urged. My fault, he gasped. All my fault. Doctors rushed in as his stats dropped. Through the chaos, I heard Mom crying, Olive praying, machines screaming. Starting transfusion now, someone announced. I watched my blood flow through the tubes, into my father's veins. The same rare blood type that had always connected us, now literally keeping him alive. Hours later, the crisis had passed. Dad was stable, the initial transfusion successful. I sat in my recovery chair, feeling weak but determined. You saved him, Mom said, bringing me juice. Again. I didn't do it for you. I know. She sat beside me. But I need to tell you something about the night of your accident. Dad already told me. He forgot to warn me about the storm. No, Mom's voice cracked. I told him not to call. I was angry because you were always taking Olive's responsibilities. I thought letting you drive in the storm would teach you both a lesson. The juice container slipped from my hand. Mom. Olive stood in the doorway, horrified. "I've lived with that guilt every day," Mom whispered. "Watching you in that coma, knowing I could have prevented it." "Get out." My voice was ice. "Both of you, get out." They left, leaving me alone with my thoughts and the steady beep of Dad's monitors. Robbie found me there an hour later. "Your mom told me what she confessed," he said gently. "My own mother." I couldn't finish. "What are you going to do?" Before I could answer, a news crew appeared in the hallway. Apparently, someone had leaked the story. "Daughter wakes from coma to save father who abandoned her." "Ms. Santos," a reporter called out. "Can we get a statement?" "No," I started to say, but then stopped. Maybe this was it, my chance for the perfect revenge. One interview could expose everything. But as I looked at Dad's sleeping form, at the blood still flowing between us, I realized something. Revenge wouldn't heal me. It wouldn't undo the accident or the abandonment or Mom's terrible choice. "No comment," I said firmly, closing the door. "You could have destroyed them," Robbie observed. "I know." I watched Dad's chest rise and fall. "But I'm not doing this for revenge anymore. I'm doing it because I need to know who I am without their mistakes defining me." The monitors beeped steadily, marking each moment of my father's borrowed time. Time I had given him, not out of forgiveness, but out of choice. Sometimes the best revenge isn't revenge at all. Sometimes it's simply choosing to be better than those who hurt you. The final blood transfusion finished dripping through the IV line. Dad's color had improved significantly, and the doctors were optimistic about his recovery. As I sat in my usual chair, disconnecting from the machine, Olive appeared with 2 cups of coffee. "Black," she said, offering one to me. I remembered this time. I accepted the cup, noting the dark circles under her eyes. She hadn't left the hospital since Mom's confession 3 days ago. "Have you talked to her?" Olive asked. "No, have you?" "How could I?" She slumped into the chair beside me. All this time I blamed myself for the accident, but Mom... Dad stirred in his bed, interrupting our conversation. "Girls?" We both moved closer. His voice was stronger now, more like the father I remembered. "I heard everything," he said, "about your mother's confession. I've been awake more than you realized." "Dad, you should rest," Olive started. "No, I need to say this." He grabbed both our hands. "I failed you both, as a father, as a protector. I let your mother's bitterness poison our family, and then I let my own cowardice destroy what was left." "Dad, let me finish." His grip tightened. "Lexi, you saved my life, not just with your blood, but with your strength. You showed us all what real family means." A knock at the door interrupted us. Mom stood there, looking small and broken. "Get out," Olive snapped. "No," I said quietly. "Let her speak." Mom stepped into the room, hands shaking. "I signed us all up for family therapy. Long-term intensive treatment. She pulled out some papers. "I'm resigning from the hospital board. I don't deserve to make decisions about patient care, not after what I did." "That's not enough," Olive said. "I know." Mom's voice cracked. "Nothing will ever be enough. But I need you all to know something. The night of the accident, I didn't just fail as a mother. I committed a crime. I'm going to the police station tomorrow to confess my role in endangering Lexi's life." The room went silent. "You'll go to jail," Dad whispered. "Good," Mom replied. "Maybe then I can start paying for what I did." I stood up, my legs shaky from the transfusion. "No." "Lexi, I deserve—" "You don't get to take the easy way out," I cut her off. "Going to jail is easier than facing us every day, trying to rebuild what you destroyed. If you want redemption, you have to earn it the hard way." "How?" "By staying, by doing the work, by watching me recover and knowing you caused my pain, by facing Olive's guilt that was never hers to carry, by looking Dad in the eye, knowing you almost cost him both his daughters." Tears streamed down Mom's face. "I don't deserve another chance." "This isn't about what you deserve," I said firmly. "This is about what we need, all of us." Dad cleared his throat. "The therapy starts tomorrow?" Mom nodded. "Then we'll all be there," he said. "Every session, no excuses." Olive stood up. "I'm moving back home, taking a sabbatical from work. We're doing this right this time." "And I'm moving out," I announced. "What?" They all turned to me. Robbie found me an apartment near the hospital. I need space to heal on my own terms. But I looked at each of them. I'll come to therapy. I'll have dinner once a week. I'll try. That's more than we deserve, Dad said softly. It's not about deserving, I repeated. It's about choosing, and I choose to give us all a chance to be better. The setting sun cast long shadows across the hospital room, highlighting the tears on everyone's faces. We weren't healed, not even close, but maybe we were finally honest. As if on cue, Robbie and Leah appeared with takeout dinner. Family meeting over? Leah asked, reading the room. No, I said, taking the bags from them. Family meeting is just beginning. Pull up some chairs. As we sat there eating hospital room dinner, the conversation was awkward, painful, real. Mom couldn't meet anyone's eyes. Olive kept wiping away tears. Dad watched us all with a mixture of grief and hope. But we were there, together, choosing to stay despite the pain, choosing to heal despite the scars. I caught Robbie's eye across the room and he gave me a subtle thumbs up. He knew, better than anyone, how far I'd come from that angry, betrayed woman who woke up from a coma to an empty room. The revenge I'd planned had transformed into something else entirely. Not forgiveness, exactly, but a chance at redemption. For all of us. Sometimes the hardest battles aren't fought with weapons or words, but with the simple, stubborn choice to stay and face the damage we've done. And sometimes, just sometimes, that choice is enough to begin again.